おはようございます。おはようございます。おはようございます。おはようございます。おはようございます。おはようございます。NA っすね。まあ6000しかねえんだけど。6000かかんないけど、12、3度か。A と B だけだと思う。
EMEA number 1 seed Element 6 has a fresh new look, adding in 2 new talents from the roller pool, Cracked and Slab. Element 6 has been dominant in the EMEA region and has never been able to swipe.
気合で起きたわ。気合で。気合で起きました。
Gives them the juice to go all the way. Longtime fans of the EMEA ALGS will be stoked to welcome back Bryn. Popular among pros, this hot prospect back in 2022 vanished from the scene. Like a phoenix, he's risen from the ashes and playing alongside Sir Dell and Noises on the team The Full English. This trio will want to pick back up where they left off and remind fans why they loved him. Aurora also lean into the Year 4 Phoenix storyline, confirming the return of M&K legend Hardeki, joining the duo of Impulse and Oirein. When you take an unconventional and aggressive playstyle and add in a dash of raw M&K talent, sparks will fly. Get ready for an exciting ride as Shiv and Mandy step into the ALGS fray with 40% bursts.
TSM 衝動あんのかな。
Challenges like Shiv's injury, Mandy's retirement,
どうだったか知らねえんだよな。NA 全然見てるからわかんねえ。コンジッタが多いみたいなの走ってんだけど。どうしかわかんねえ。
With no expectations and everything at stake, they're set to bring an all-out, unstoppable energy to the ALGS Pro League. With all this and more, we're looking forward to the best year of Apex Legends esports ever. Find us on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and be sure to follow us for the start of Year 4 ALGS Pro League on January 20th. See you there.
Oh, 時間取り始まんの。奇跡だな、これな。ほんと？エーペックス方式ちょこちょこ遅れるからな。ちょこちょこ。フューズどうなんだろうね。まあいいでしょ。全然見てないからわかんないそれ。CEO! Oh, I don't know.
Year 4 in the ALGS. It's split one.
Year 4 ALGS.
It's time to get underway with the best that Battle Royale has to offer in the world. My name is Rainday, and I am so ready after a long off season and a brand new year. Happy New Year, by the way. It's a chance to see stories unfold, maybe new stories that we haven't seen before, and maybe tried and tested stories that have passed on from just normal consideration into a mythos that will not be able to be competed against. Will the likes of TSM raise their trophy again, which is where we left them just a few months ago? Or will we see all the roster changes, all the swaps,
spoil us
to make themselves a chance at having glory? And of course, the biggest name, the ALGS. All of that to unfold, and it starts off here with day one, and that's why we're going to get underway here. Everyone joining us, welcome. Let's get it started. All right, of course, I've got to bring in my duo who's going to be working with me all day long. We had EMEA earlier, and now it's a chance to go back to it in North America. Of course, Mark, Onset Hatcher, bringing the play-by-play. Mark, it's North America. This is where the champions reside. We're going to have a whole year to see if that stays the same.
Yeah, it's a team with a target on their back for sure. TSM, of course, are champions, but if you have been living under a rock for the last few months, ever since Champs, where we saw them lift that trophy, so much has gone down with the competition. So many team changes, so many org changes, so much has happened to try and close it. It's going to be an amazing season, and I'm sure this is going to be a day to remember too.
And of course, for those who didn't see the introduction in EMEA, alongside Mark, Dan's been holding it down as an amazing color commentator. He's won the Esports Award for color commentary last November. So congratulations right off that. And Dan, again, a fresh start, not only to the ALGS, but to a year for all of us to get this action back.
Yeah, and we know that North America delivers in a very different way to what we saw from EMEA earlier as well. So I just can't wait to see what people have got up their sleeves, because scrims have told us a few things, but as we learned in EMEA, scrims don't tell us the whole story. But we will start to develop that story starting here today.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting elements about live. Whether it's a show, whether it's a tournament, an event like this, you always see different results than practice. It's just one of those exciting things that makes sure you have to keep your eyes glued to the screen. For those joining us and maybe not familiar with how the ALGS runs, or if you've had a couple of moments in the offseason where now you're trying to get back into the flow, we've got a perfect video to set up how the course of this season will take place and transpire, and ultimately how you'll get to the prize play in the Split 1 playoffs.
幻覚が作る一番強い構成なんでしょうかね。さあ、なんですかね。なんですかね。難しいよな。構成なんて。
Teams will begin by competing in a triple round robin format, where each group plays a match series against every other group 3 times.
リフトだったけどカタリストなしだったしな。
Have been completed. The top 20 teams, according to the regular season standings, will compete in the regional finals. At the conclusion of the regional finals, 40 teams, including teams from all 6 ALGS regions, will have qualified for the Split 1 playoffs.
Of course, if you need any more information than that, sometimes it takes a rewatch.
ヒルズバッターギー、バッテンじゃろ。おー、正解ですね。はい、おはようございます。
Cute little Nessie icon behind that's, you know, homemade.
おい、ネッシー、透けてんぞ。
And his partner for making this for us in the green room.
ネッシー、透けてるわ。
And then it'll take you right to the landing page, give you all the information on when our ALGS broadcasts take place.
おはよう、カタリストは弱体されたものをやっぱウルトラオンリーワンなどですかね。いや、アビリティも超強いけどな。アビリティクソ邪魔だよ。
Talked about this idea of a great reset, partially because every team needed to see how they could best compete, and really they're aiming for first. A lot of these teams have been beneath first for a while, so there really had to be some major changes. But just as an idea, I know we've got a graphic indicating just a little bit of what has transpired. We'll get into that in just a moment, but before we even do jump in there, I want to lead this to Dan. A few new ways to get some
昨日あげた ALGS のやつ、再生数すごいな、4万いってる。あちー。ボロ儲け、ボロ儲け。儲かりますね。いや、プロリーグ期間はいいっすね。ブーストされる。ボーナスポイント。50ポイント下がったら。プラス。今から配信見ながら寝ます。おやすみ。エルしかねえ。
I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, 5 match wins, couple of bonus points. I mean, there it is.
でもあれだな、確かに。リードルもやりたかったね。
Seems like the season is starting off pretty simple. I teed this off a little early, Mark.
CR も入ったかな ?CR 入ってなかったかな
Roster changes have been significant. Walk us through. We've got a graph to support this, but
CR 入れたかな
just the concept of this great reset and how many teams have made swaps over the course of these last few months.
さあ、選手の意外な結構あったと。エイズにパンダーズとゼラトリッキーが入った。ダークゼロにサインズ。ジェントも入ったのこれ。そうなの
0, massive change for them as well, picking up Sykes over from Exet, who then in turn look at Sentinel's roster and go, hey, you know what, we want to take Koiful away, and that's exactly what they did. There has been so much that's gone down. Didn't even get to mention Furia or DSG. It's crazy. Honestly, you won't see many off seasons that make this many changes at the top, so get ready for a roller coaster.
I mean, I just want to shout out too that one of the talent in R6, Jess Goat, I think she's been nominated as well. She mentioned if I had something like that on my broadcast, I would be so grateful. So Tanya,
ユキトリティ強かった。リレクト強えよ。多分ね、もう全員、もう誰に聞いてもリレクトは100上位入るって言うから。100%。おはようございます。リレクトは上位入ることがないからね。ほぼほぼ。マジでモチベ上がるな。しかし実際にやるとな、なんかチーターまみるっていう現実だからな。泣いちゃう。
Against Dark Zero to see who would be the best last year. Championships sealed the deal in dramatic fashion in September of 2023. What a performance. They are certainly the team to beat, but they've been known to have slumps, whether in the beginning or in the middle of these split ones. So will they start off strong is our question.
ヒロドラップが危ねえ。まだ1周目だから大丈夫だよ。まあでも一応なんかルール結構特殊だからさ、世界大会行くために。だからね、6周目っていうのが5周目までのトップ20なんだけども、ウィーク5までやった時に、まあポイントがあるんだけども、そのポイントがそのままウィーク6まで行って、ウィーク6で実際に稼げるポイントって、いつも通りなんだよね。25ポイントから0ポイント、どれか。だからファイナル上がれたとしても、その2位になって、世界大会行けないっていうのもある。1位は問答無用で確か行けるんだけど。なんか結構変なルールなんだよね。まあ簡単な話がトップ20に入ったらウィーク6でもポイントを稼げるってだけね。単純な話。確か。ロード世界無理じゃないよ。全然無理じゃないよ。
Kind of weird. I'm not really understanding. Again, nice way. Cloud is everything esports. You don't actually have to be good at the games. You just have to be famous, like Sentinel. Yeah, you know, I'm starting to see that's here. Zainu, land champion as well. He doesn't get much better than this. Does he post on TikTok? Like TikTok's the new big thing. Do you want him posting thirst trap? Yeah, I have no idea what he's doing. Cloud. What about that Timmy guy? What's he up to? He's pretty good. But and he has a lot of Twitter followers. Tons of Twitter, but he's on 100 Vs. I don't see how that's gonna work out. Alright. Now, why don't we just ask him? Timmy, you want to join DSG? Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
アンチ勝ったね。昨日5回南だったっけ ?4 回か。4回南。今日定全部ソロファイターあるのかなわかんないっすね。
I love it there. You know, Disguise, he drives a hard bargain toast. Make sure you got to have the Twitter followers. It was almost going to be Zainu thirst traps on TikTok. Dan, I'm glad we went a different direction here, but it seems like Timmy and his squad, Dojo, formerly have found a good spot.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the 100 Thieves have allowed it to happen as well, because it means that we get even more coverage from different organizations joining DSG. I mean, actually, Disguised Toast, who won an award at the Esports Award as well. Yeah. Great to see new organizations coming into play and making sure they have a solid squad here in Apex. I'm excited to see what they can do, though, because they're one of the few teams that have stuck together throughout all the roster mania, and I'm sure that we're going to see some great stuff.
In fact, let's head over and take a look at what we did with Timmy earlier before the season started. Hear a little bit about him and his thoughts on Disguised.
Hey guys, it's Timmy here. My teammates are Design, Enemy, and our coach is Bronzine. We are on the team Disguise, also known as DSG. It's honestly a great feeling, Design and Enemy and Bronzine get a org to represent. They're going to do their absolute jobs to put us out there, and we get to just focus on winning. So I think me and the boys are gonna go crazy this year, and I'm really excited. It's really cool, you know, like I never thought I could be on 2 orgs at once, but you know, 100 Thieves was really kind to let me compete on DSG as a pro player, and you know, there's a lot of back ends, you know, have to meet. But at the end, I do think it's a really cool opportunity, and I'm really excited to be a content creator for 100 Thieves and do my best for them, and also compete on DSG.
DSG。
Obviously, so
外ムー
much
ブ
story, but Mark,
基本的に厳しいよ、
in terms
外ムー
of
ブ
new
は。
contenders here in North America to talk about.
Yeah, certainly some squads to keep your eye on right now. Native
これ昨日の残り方見たらわかるけどね。明らかに残りすぎてやばいもんな。動けないもんな。
Everyone, the man with the hair and the man who loves to frag. He is back in the ALGS, and he's going to be certainly a player to keep your eyes on. PLP, a team which is made up and IGL by Phony. Frex is going to be joining him, and Zainu, the land champion, will be on that squad. Very excited to see what they can do. Of course, led by the IGL in Phony. And then you've got, of course, Moist Esports moving over. I mentioned from ANZ, and they're picking up Guild, who's
いい意味はね、甘いですね。
obviously the ex-NRG man joining the
おはようござい
team
ま
as
す。
they compete in North America for the first time, trying to follow in the footsteps of Dark Zero.
And then from new contenders, we've got our new beginnings, but you could arguably say some of these could be new contenders as well. Dark Zero, how can we not talk about Dark Zero? Carrying on the same path as they had before, picking up...
ユーレ今これなんだね。ヒズワとアイムマットネス、キーオン。
I think they are going to be a squad to watch, and then the return of his Watson, Furia. They really pioneered the way of play back
いや
in
っ
the
せ
day when
ジブ増えればな、バボンいっぱい消えるのに。ジブ増えないからな。
what they can do here in Pro League alongside Madness.
ザクキャラだ
Of
ね。
course, Madness is an IGL.
相馬さんの声聞いてから仕事行きます。いいでしょう。
The announcement was finally made. Sweet makes his return alongside
ドームがね、今短いしな。
a very impressive squad, but will
昔ドームが長かったからな。18秒とかあったからな。バカ強かったんだよ。
Amazing stuff from, I believe, just Furia. That comeback from his Watson, I'm keeping my eyes on that so much here. But all to prove, this is somebody, and these teams are people that really you need to pay attention to. 2 out of 3 of our EMEA, all the proves actually ended up in the top 10. And I think this is a great sign for teams knowing that they've got to make a strong start. GKS, Sorcerer, Sleepy Panda, Chaotic Much have to show up big today. Zach Mazer on Elevate Gaming, he's had leadership opportunities from Cloud9 and huge rosters. Can he do it with Shubi and Zap this time around? Finally get what he needs to get going there. And Mark, you know, meat lovers, they're kind of an enigma, a story of their own.
They certainly are indeed. You talk about all to prove. Tech's been trying to prove himself for so long, and he's got 2 new players alongside him to do exactly that. You've got a man who isn't too unfamiliar with a shotgun, but it's going to be a Nasha swapped out for a Peacekeeper or a Mastiff. For A1's a former Gears of War man there
ミラー
himself.
ジュカミ、でも皆さん仕事じゃないですか？大丈夫ですか？
Very hot contest.
こんな朝から。 大丈夫、学校は？学校仕事ね、大丈夫かい？
Yeah, very, very
上手い人がいてさらに上がいるの面白いな。全体的にやっぱレベル高いのは NA だからな。
We have time to figure that out. But of course, today we'll take a look at groups A versus B.
さあ、これが A かな。
Zoom in on who's in each group. For our viewers at home, we've got Group A.
松江のか TSM ルミノシもついている。オキシジン。あんまわかんねえな、正直。正直わからん。
They will play in Group A whenever you see them around. Group B as well features
わかんないな、あんまり。誰いんの？さあ、B はアペギャングとかいいんだけど。コンプレクシティはわかる、ダークでわかる。エレブエイトもまあわかるっちゃわかる。オプティックフェーズ、言うてそこまでわかんないな。言うてそこまでわかんないな。NA、ディスガイズとフューリア。なんかマークついてない人もいるんだね。プロじゃないチーム結構いるんか、NA は多分。ミートラバーズ。ミート C か。じゃあ今日当たんないっぽいね、初動は。あ、チーム惚れたわ。A が、まあ皆さん知ってるかやっぱ LG。不思議も知ってるかな ?TSM。E が、まあ COL。ダークゼロ。エレベートも知ってる人は知ってるかもしれない。フェーズオプティック。あ、ここはザイニュいるんだね。PLP。はいはい。強いな。ザイニュフレックスフォニーか。って感じかな皆さん知ってるかと。 ああ、スキューリいるんだね。これ、100T のメンバーだね。アルブラか。ここアルブラなんだ。SKRT。アルブラ、はい。ネイティブがランボー。なんちゃらなんちゃらなんちゃら。わかんないね。操作ライル。顔テクマッチがいる。まあ、選手はわかるな。チームはちょっとわかんないけど。グループだけランダムじゃないんだよね。去年の成績と予選の勝ち上がりの順位みたいな感じかな。で決まる。振り分けられる。
North America, I expect a similar thing, but sometimes we do see a few teams stand out from the pack, at least in the early days. But one thing is for sure, this is where our champions have come from this last year. All of our LAN champions have been playing in North America. Will that stay the same? Either way, we know we're going to get some juggernaut.
どうだったんですか ?DSM!
Let's kick it off. Let's kick year 4 into gear. And our first split, our first day.
スナイプはどこだろうね。いないのかな。仕事に行くのつらい。もうやめたらいいんじゃない？配信者になろう、配信者に。配信者だったらね、これ自由な時間に配信ポチでつけるんですよ。終わり。で、配信で使った動画っていうのを適当にパパッと編集してっぽいですよ。で、チャリーン。終わり。終わり。
dropping or rotating through that zone, but ultimately we're going to be keeping a keen eye as always on contests. Who's going to be fighting who, which teams are going to be able to get those early fights out of the way, and how will it affect them as things go down. As far as I'm aware, we have potentially 2 contests happening in A versus B at the wall between Casual and Temper, and Northpad between Secret Formula and Eternal, so both of those teams will have to keep an eye on in the early fights.
We certainly will indeed, and there is a Lightning Rod which has had a few contests going down over the last few months of scrims, but today TSM will call that home. See some of the new POIs as well as we fly our way.
外線のテージ進みます。お、始まるじゃねこれも。今日から配信じゃないです。いいよ、やりなよ。マジ早めやった方がいいよ。甘い蜜吸おうぜ。配信者や YouTuber だって。あ、始まった TSM 信者。マップ増えてほしいよね。そうなんだよ。初老入るな。誰だこれ。ドルフィンゲーミングプロゲーミングチーム。さあちょっと一人も分かんないですね。申し訳ない。クローブだけちょっと聞いたことあるかなってレベル。これ誰？スターにしよう。スターブリッジ。さあファイト。さあホライゾンブラハ。ホライゾンブラハコンジと。もう初動ファイト用の構成かこれ。やるね。相手誰？相手見せて。DNO ゲーミングだって。あ、セノックスいいじゃん。ドロップ。ドゥープレックスか。あ、めっちゃ強いじゃん。クラストいいんだけど。ここ結構やべえチームじゃん。バケモンチームじゃん。神チームだ。あだー、これは死ぬ。しかし相手なかなか攻めてこない。意外とダメージ入ってる。ここ結構ドリーミングチームじゃね？意外と。ドリーミンチーム。ドルフィンゲーミングちょっと素晴らしいね。さあ PK 早く行けよお前ら。なんでそんなに逃げるんかい。挟んでる。上攻めんじゃない？上効率してね。上行ったね。さあ中いる。音聞けてない？わかんない。クラスト？あ、地下かよ。おい初動ファイトここで長引かせていいのかい？絶対逆来るからね。スクリーンは来なかったかもしんない。しかし本番やっぱ来るんだよ、こういうのはね。な。YouTube がついてどっちがいいですか？両方だよ。両方。今同時配信可能だからやるんだよ、全部。TikTok もやるんだよ。全部使うんだよ、全部。おっと、初動ファイトがね、終わってないんですけど。もう誰にこっちになりましたね、マップ。さあ、上がクソ珍しいね。正直なかった。俺がスクリーン見てるとき、ストコの上は。兄弟兄弟いいんだけど。ナコアショメシークレットフォーミュラ このチーム勝ちました。優勝候補ですね、おそらく。誰こいつユービン。さあ、いいスモークです。そしてあれ誰 ?EEC。いや、全然わかんねえ。正直 NA 結構なんかチーム撤退したからね。ちょっと知らないチーム結構いるわ。選手もわかんないわ、全く。まあいいでしょ。今日で覚えてやろう。お前らは誰だ？エターナル EC。カーター。コース。EEC ボイド。わあ、ね。日清のシールなくなってましたね。ないんすよ。日清さん。なんでだよ。なんでだよ。てか誰も CM 撮ってなかったね、解説陣。くそ、俺がやるのに任せてくれよ、マジで。CM なら任せてくれよ、俺がやろうと思ったね。なかった。ダークゼロだ。さあ、コンジット、カタリスト、バンガと。まあ移動はやっぱりね、バンガとカタリストいたらもうここ移動できるって考えですね。出ますか ?4 時間ぐらいだ。2時半ぐらいに寝て、6時半ぐらいに起きた。気合で。気合がちげえ。俺は気合がちげえからよ。さあ、ダークゼロそこでストップか。さあ、フェイズ。さあ、今日発表されたね、加入がゼラトリッキーとパンダーズ。さあ、この子すごいね。コンジットカタリストバンガー。これがメタか？コンジットリアルにクソいね。半分ぐらいいんのかな？じゃあ、ソンがいないね、ソンが。やはり環境が違うな。ファイター。あ、でもソン結構強かったけどね、ギル見てると。あ、ストップは少ないね、正直。ソン。ストップは少なかったね、日韓は。ワールドエッジはクソ多いけど。NA コンジット強いらしいっすよ。ここもコンジットだしな。ああハイドしてるこいつらそんなバカなさ、GKS。ソーサラーとカオテックマッチと、これなんだ、パンダ。3P パンダ。I3P パンダ。ちょっとわかんねえわ。パンダーズパンダーズか、こいつ。どうだろうわかんねえ。パンダーズかもしれない。GKS。パンダーズは別か。詳しい方いらっしゃるのでいいね。マップ隠れてませんよ、これ。さあ、TSL 神ポジンじゃん、これ。まあ、神ポジって言えば多分ここなんだよね、最初の地って。今までだったらね、今だったらここら辺、オブリビオンってとこいる。どこだ、これ。ネイティブゲーミングかな多分。あ、違うな、ここか。オブリビオンっていうチームが普通に。あ、これ名前じゃねえか。TMA か。さあ、ドルフィンはアンチガイ。今死んじゃったからね。なんかこれまだいる。これはなんだモーゼムーブかもしかして。4チーム外か。結構いるね。これは1ですね。書いてあるとここに。読むんだ。画面に書いたんだ、いつも。あ結構ごっちゃったね。TSM! TSM! さあ、SKRT。アルブラ。アルバスキューリー。もう一人ちょっとわかんねえな。誰だったかな。We'll let everybody else take their time. We'll let everybody else get inside of that zone. We're going to play it late. We're going to be healing up, and we're going to see if we can force our way in late. Or maybe もう一人誰かちょっとわかんねえっす。もう申し訳ない。
May not have mentioned in the pre-show, but I'm very excited for Albrelelli playing some of his best Apex now, even taking me back to TSM Albrelelli with how he's been competing, and I'm very excited to see whether they can kind of find a rhythm here in ALGS Year 4. Now, we touched on TSM, we touched on their positioning over towards Zeus, and the fact that
そうですね。ちょっとわかんねえな。
contested by other teams that may happen in other groups, and that meant they could make this comfortable rotation over towards Zeus here, and they now hold some pretty good positioning.
ちょっとわかんないっす。気づきませんでした。だからね、どの試合も書いてあるよ。ちなみに99を理由はね、99の強いんですよ、猛者的に言ったら。リアルに。カーより99だね。まあ、ボルトが一番なんだけど。ボルト、99、カーってな感じになってね。通常武器だったら。あっハイドしかいねえ、このゲームハイドしかいないおいおいおい、リドルさん、こういうことなの。さあ、裏回りですね、TSM。これ決まるかハイドめっちゃやるぞ、ちなみに。ハイドゲーだからな。そこいけんの ?TSM インベルハル死ぬ !TSM! さあ、一旦壁立て耐久。これで一旦回復。神ポジこれ言ってまだ入ってないぞ、これ。どこまで行くのこれ。もしかしてフェーズに当たるか、これ。前に行くのかなあ、前の箱入ってんね。前の箱は入る。でも前の箱きつくね。横は左遷通されて終わるな。ワンチャンオブリビオンに攻めねえかな、これ。フェーズの下入るか。とりあえず。3階突っ込むんだ。いや、そこのハイド。スモークはないな。さあ、一旦どくか。さあ、スナイピンいるよ、スナイピン。スナイプバースやべえ。バースか。バースやばい、今のハボック。タモチャのハボック前進してた。おー、遠くまで行った。グレ投げられたら結構怖いけど。しかし同居してなんとか耐えれそう。北線おはようございます。99が急速開始、カーより中級打てるかって。そうですね。みんな99だね、ちなみに。でも R いないね。あわま。まあ、ホライゾンだし、ちょっと一発いくかもしれないね、これ。さあ、外でボイド。EEC オプティック。あ、ほら、行く。俺行くよ、これ。これやるぞ。これやるよ。違う、隣行ったんか、こいつら。あ、展開してただけか。なるほど。展開してただけだったんだよね。すごい TSM。めっちゃいいと思ったじゃん。これアンチ入ったらでかくねえか。さあ、ハボック3030。I'm looking. 見る。確認。ません。
Pretty sure I heard someone below us. I'm going bottom 4. Evan, you should anchor bottom 4, I think, so you can play. Right here.
勝手に潰しちゃってくれそうで。待って、エレベートくらい。言って、エレベートそんな来ないか。まあ、そこで耐久か。意外といいポジションだね。オプティック、これ。EC に完全に睨まれて。終わったあ、蘇生した。さあ、EC は、まあ、言うて入れそうっすね。強っさあ、LA もクソパッと多いんだよな。日本より多いんじゃないかなわかんないけど。日本とか日韓より多いんじゃないアーキング。おー、つー起きれた素晴らしいね。さあ、スモーキング1名。さあ、レプスが若干食らっていく。
A home, but FaZe also quite rightfully moved away because they recognized there was some aggression below them and they weren't really equipped to take a straight fight. But speaking of,
さあ、これ洞窟かな雲洞窟。 さあランボまだ43クラッシュ来るのかな。ザイニュー PLP おい全滅ザイニューゴッドザイニュー。しかしダークゼロから蹴られてしまったゴッドザイニュー。ここやばいな。3パッドだな。3パッドスーパー火力ゲーじゃん。NA パッドガチ強いからな。ちなみに NA パッドマジでガチでスーパー強いからな。スナイプおじさん頑張ってるよ。おはようございます。出勤中です。おお仕事しながら見るのか。素晴らしい。意識高いね。さあ上行ったね。これあれだね。オブリビオンが有利だねやっぱり。さあオキシジンもクソ強いからなマジで。ベインって人はキーマンなんだけど神らしいっす。神ゴッドオブゴッドオブリビオン。ああそうやってるね。結構損は無双しそうだね。オキシジンこれやばいね。入るしかない。待ってスイートもいいんだけど。あスイートはこれ仲間か。ベイン間に合うか。前に行くしかないがベインがもう無理だ。ベインゴッドベイン。さあエイダンも入っていくんですがこれは無理だ。さあ一瞬耐久スイート行く。スイート行く。待ってちょっとあ死んだスイートちょっと危なかったね今ちょっと危なかったです。それ行くんだね。さあ GKS こちらも相当な火力。 PLP 死んだ。シークレットフォームラ。さあアルブラのムーブはどう。変わっていくマッチいる。これも玉か。痛い。それ行くんだね。すごスキルリー。まあ言うてキーバーしすぐ引けるか。やべおお強い。おお強い。いいねキーマースモークなんですよ。ちょっとカバがおー勝つんすね。結構普通に勝ったな。でスキルリー強いな。
just on time and now they will have the entirety of this southern side but they have to move up through this cave and again it's going to be LG
NA は硬い人確定で入ってるね。ちなみに硬い人アンチ読めるからね。
Zero going to swing and Dark Zero going to take down Temper. Great shots coming in from Zero and Sykes alongside Jim Burton is terrifying enough.
Dark Zero.
Directed in a way that Zero
肩コンジットバンがメタだね。さあフェーズが当たってる TSA はこれはもう完全に孤立したポジションにいる。素晴らしい。やっぱ絡まれない移動してるね TSA。こういうのやっぱうまいんですよね。やべ終わった。パンダザフェーズか。 TSM やばいねポジ。いや素晴らしいね。やっぱこういうムーブできるのは頭いいと思うわ。ヘイトを買わないポジもう完全フリー打ちだもんね。でやり合って下が終わった頃に玉に行くとかだもんね。こういうのうまいよね。こういうムーブできるのって多分日本だとノーセットとかリジェクトかな。うまいの。リドルも結構うまいの。ブナもできるかな結構こういうの。ただダークでは3人残ってるね。結構ムキムキ。おっとー TSM フォーカスアウトされた。さあシオルしかしこれ車線切った。起こせそう。グループ入んない。さあそのまま行く。待ってこれ TSM やばい。待てまあキーマレップスうわートレンドに切った。さあただこれはどうなんだ。ルミナシティは残った気する。ルミナシティ上だしな。これオブリビオン死んだんじゃないの。全然映ってないけど
to see, and I'm sure what we're going to see plenty of this season. But Complexity will be delighted because that frees up their spot. It also allows them to push themselves into the top 4. So now Complexity have to approach from the west. LG and Skirt still need
誰だ上のやつ。誰だこいつら。あいつらオブリビオンなのかな。ルミノシティは一旦これアルブラ切る。張り付いて切るか。ここで切るしかないね。だってアルブラたちがきついねこれ。うん。まあこれアルブラたちが先死ぬかな、ほぼほぼ。さあ空爆。横は車線はやばい。逆にこれ上突っ込んでくれたらあるか。下降りるか。なるほど。まあ下だったらいけんね。一旦壁体系。アルブラどうするの？それ攻めんのかな。行くんだ。すごい。落としてる。スクーリー。さあノックダウン使って回復。ここ来た。ドンマイ。玄米。さああとは下と上か。COL2 人。さすがにオブリビオンか。でまあここはねポジゲーなんだよな正直。まあこれアンチゲースちなみにだけどオブリビオンのポジってさガチでチャンピオンポジなんだよね。で待ってないんだもんリアルに。しかも損だしね強かったね。空爆受けないしグレも来ないしフェンス合ってるから相手も入ってこれないし。なるほど。まあこれはね結構ね運ゲーですね。大体あそこにいるチームが勝つからリアルに。リズム取り切って死んでなかったね。まあそうだね。とりあえずはまあ上ゲーだね。まああそこはもうチャンピオンです。リアルに多分8割取れると思うチャンピオンっていうレベル。でも上アンチマジで珍しいな。We had a few teams inting perhaps because they realized they were in a poor position on the map because everyone fighting uphill, right? You don't want to be in that final circle walking uphill and just getting shot aimlessly by whoever has eyes on you. そこは先取りってか今のポジションは先取りしたチームが基本勝ちます。上下から上登れないじゃんあれしかも。
Yeah, it certainly was a fun one to watch and good to see how teams navigated from that southern side up to try and fight their way into the north. The one thing about that hill is you do have some rock formations to allow you to kind of bunker down.
ガチ一方的だからあれリアルに。
They thought that they could overextend, look over a team and a fight that was going down in the distance. Didn't realize the Dark Zero were there just around that corner and their game, which they probably thought were just looking for a few extra KP before we.
でさっきのワッツソンの方さ打ち合いに行っても今日振られるだけだからね。だから誰も戦闘しに行かないっていうね。段差高いし遮蔽はそこまでないんだけどな。上から撃たれるんだけども言うて仕掛けてくる人がいないんだよねあれ絶対に。魚振られるから。絶対仕掛けてこない。AB されるんだちょっとわかんないしチームが。犬全然見てないからわかんない俺全く。コンジットゲーなー。リアルにコンジット多すぎんガチで。マップ改変前だと多かったね。で北側は結構多かったよねストポは。もう平井新ランチが全くないけどもかなり薄いね。 金字塔あるとあそこ壊した方がいいね。壊せるものから壊すでいいんじゃないかな。渋の選択肢言ってる。
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the ALGS. Game 2 upon us in just a moment. Brain Day, Gaskin on the mic for this one. However, let's talk a little bit, rehash what happened in Game 1, Dan. We have some time. It wasn't necessarily what we expected. LG was in the mix. Even TSM was in the mix. Dark Zero as well. They ended up cannibalizing each other. And, you know, the win doesn't always go towards some of the bigger expected names, but maybe the most deserving, for sure, in terms of playing that final circle.
Yeah, I think that when you get a circle like that is so heavily northern based, you have to tip your hat to the teams who dropped on the southern side and where they were able to finish. And Oblivion dropping at Cascade Falls, I mean, credit to them. They were able to rotate in a way where they found themselves right on that northern tip above everyone in the end. And I think they'll be
この人の耐久やばいよね。硬すぎるガチで。硬すぎる。
with their game 1 performance, but sometimes it is just ironing out the kinks a little bit.
99ワンマゴって倒せる今。この人と。耐久値わかんないけど。結構ギリギリだよな。紫あって。
Don't necessarily go that way. We're going to have to see how they did in terms of kills, and obviously their placement will give them 12, but we'll have our standings ready in just a moment. We're still waiting on that. Big differences that you've seen so far in EMEA. I mean, we were kind of questioning. We saw some bloodhounds in EMEA. We saw in terms of pacing as well, way more content to, you know, rush at teams, take advantages in scrims. When you get into this pro league environment, things slow down a little bit. It's kind of like things get a little colder. People put their jackets on. They move a little slower, a little more cautious, not just wasting energy unless they know it's going to be a guaranteed result turned back to them. So Dan, any
だから場所決まってないですね。決まってないから情報が出てないですね。
first games in EMEA?
Not seeing as much conduits, that's for sure. Plenty of Horizon.
225だったとか紫だったらいけるか。
Throwing themselves on Horizon and Bang because we know how important both those legends are, and a slight bit more of aggression, I would say, here in North America. People are pushing fights a lot quicker. We saw in EMEA if a team felt they were down in the fight, even if they hadn't lost a player, they were kind of backing off. They were trying to make a different rotation.
まあ情報での多分ウィーク6じゃね、ファイナルだったと思う。
NA squad seem to be committed to their rotations, saying, all right, this is where we're going. We either die on this hill or not, and it makes for some very interesting viewing because we're getting some really good skirmishes.
Well, we should have match results coming.
あ、0時のチャンネルでちょっと情報出るかわかんないけど。それにこのプレイエペックスの方は出ると思うけど。
different adoption of the meta at different stages of the season. The start of the season, clearly, it's going to be back and forth for many teams.
英語喋ってるのかってビビっただろ。俺 T 大卒だから東京の。
4 kills, 12 points. Complexity right behind them in second with a kill, and that'll give them 10.
まあでも結構みんな日本に来たがってるよね。多分日本人は日本がいいよなマジで。会場絶対やばいからな。イギリス行ったけどやっぱね世界大会の割にって感じだもんね個人的には。そんなに人いない。
Yeah, I think that a lot of Apex is down to your IGL and who knows where to be positioned.
リアルに日本のなんかオフライン大会のが観戦いるドリームマッチとか。日本世界大会だったらいいやつだね。みんな遊んで帰んじゃない？飯食って。オフラインが決まってないよ。
influx of controller players being picked up by teams who want that one player to be able to get them out of a sticky situation. Your Verhos, for example, your Dainews, teams that can have players just damage and force those rotations that your IGL is trying to make. And the top 10 really does show that from that match number 1.
Zainu, a great story as we follow Dark Zero throughout this season and throughout today. Something to talk about as well. Leaving that squad, Sykes coming in, replacing him. There's a lot of conversation and speculation around why, what that moment meant for them. If you were in the building at Champs and you were there before and after Finals Day, you saw two different versions of Zero. And after Finals Day, maybe a version I hadn't seen. So upset at that result. Obviously, hoping Sykes and them can get job done so far. So far, pretty decent result. in Game 1. Storm Point will be where we head to Game 2, and Game 3 we'll switch it up to World's Edge as per usual for our final 3 games of the 6. But I want to talk more about Storm Point. You could see the difference in height, Dan. One of the things in Season 19 Ignite that the developers intentionally did was try to bring in some of the space and limit those moments where high ground made as big of a difference. We know it's still a part of the map, but there were some new additions changed and added to Storm Point, and that's kind of changed a little bit of the flow and given
YouTube 動画上げるよ。
landing options. So
上げる決まってんじゃん。1ヶ月たらもう1万よ。1万円や、この動画。あらっす。何 Changes? Central Pulse セットステーションってこと俺わかんないけど。そう。ソンパイル&セットステーション、なんちゃらかんちゃらかんちゃら、ドロップ、なんちゃらかんちゃら。Reduce over buffer size to improve mid game pressing. Sojourn consider Mount area reduced.
Certainly in both the southern and northern sides, we saw different loot pool changes. I think ultimately teams still come out on top with what changed, but it is maybe a little bit for those teams who are rotating from the southern side. Certainly coastal areas have been really a focus point. I mean, we saw some fights happening in North Pad and a contest happening at North Pad here in NA. That's because it's such a good area to drop for your rotations because it gives you so much flexibility to where you want to move, but you're also able to play edge there. So I'm excited to see how things develop as we move on, whether certain teams will feel like certain POIs are even stronger now, but for me it's still about those northern sides.
I always find it so interesting having a chance. We've developed a relationship in our team with the developers and some of the map designers. We had a chance to have them out to championships and we're doing more of those calls. But just in my experience, how maps are adjusted, and they have very intricate knowledge of where fights take place at almost every single turn, kind of like a heat map, higher heat signatures, higher fights. And they did do some very specific work on some of those hard rotations in Storm Point to make things more defensible. The Forbidden Zone, a great example of that. If you go over into the Season 19 patch notes, you can actually see buildings constructed so that teams, even though they are rotating through what was a dangerous area, now with none of the prowlers that would have bothered you in there, and even if you do and not lose your ground and be caught out left hanging. So in overall, improving, I think, player feedback and gameplay, but also I think for fans at home and learning this map, a lot that you could take from in terms of, hey, you know what? I have been dying a lot in the Forbidden Zone beforehand. I realize that maybe that is a different way that I want to approach some of these matches. A lot of these things mirror, you know, the games that viewers at home can play and some of the things that they can learn from picking up pro play as well, Dan. So always good to get that information. Take a break. We are getting this lobby loaded up again as well, which is why we are having a little bit of a chat here. It's always good to take some time, Dan. I guess this also opens up some of the meta conversation. I had kind of hinted at it earlier on. We've seen a little bit of the conduits, but to me, when you look at Conduit, when you look at Horizon, when you look at Bangalore,
繋いでますね。なんかあったか繋いでるな。どうしたトラブったか
most important legend, or maybe the most fundamental legend that we might be seeing over the course of these next few weeks.
I think it's situational. I think the biggest difference, of course, has been a new addition of Conduit and how
that's changed
early game fights, how it's changed late game fights.
コジとガチで張ってるよ、NA。
But also being able to shield your team at the right time to really get yourself over the line and maybe have that surprise factor against certain squads where they're chasing you, they think they've got you down to one shot, and then suddenly you're essentially full shields again, and you can just turn on them and wipe them in that fight. But ultimately, it's got to be Bangalore and Horizon as the two staples, especially on Storm. The smokes to be able to cross have always been so important on Storm Point, with there being little coverage at times, and then Horizon to negate some of the high ground that you have to try and go against other teams. But then we're starting to see other inclusions. I mean, we know that Cattle is still so important as well to be able to get that down to help you with rotations. There's a lot of Watson.
中国も近いし、いっぱい来るんじゃない中国なんか。ファンめっちゃいるしな。イギリスも中国ファン超多かったよ。
different ways of trying to approach the game.
ERL
That's
すげえ
what
よ
I
かった
love is we see teams playstyle sometimes just by legend
そんな
composition.
に出場してないの
But
に
new legends who do different abilities, it always shakes things up a little bit, and Conduit's done just that because not only does it elongate the fights, which makes it harder for some of these teams that are
ついと LG です
contesting,
ね
but also the teams who are near those contests can now benefit from it because either they
イギリス香港の人たくさんいるの？そうなんだ。
those teams and have an easier rotate, or they can third party and then benefit from that as well.
10 seconds, that makes all the difference. You know, we saw even in EMEA, Thermite that just delayed the entrance into fighting someone, ended up hurting a rotation of Orglis in Hungary, and they ended up losing a couple members that made it very difficult to ultimately come in first place. There's only a few points at the end of the day. You know, a character that got some changes as well that is very good at adjusting the way the landscape is played is Catalyst. She had some changes in this recent patch that were intended
Catalyst
to
changes.
bring her back in line. It doesn't seem like it's had much of an impact in terms of taking her away from the meta, but Dan, I think it's good to see just that there's some parity that the developers are
肩だいたい 50% 良くなった。
to make sure
50%
that
なんだ。
no one character ever has too much of a day in the spotlight, kind of like we've seen over past years with Seers and Gibraltars and things like that that have really dominated metas for years.
I mean, and Catalyst, we had a time where Catalyst was almost at a
おはようございま
90%
す。
pick rate.
キュージーは今 FA かな？どうだろうね。
Now kind of changed the throw range.
ヤンヤとかどこ行ったの？
50% is massive. They're not able to kind of throw that goo out and just really grief teams who are trying to arrive. Instead, she's a far more kind of passive legend at times. But still very, very important.
2戦目だ。
Live, Rende, we're
まだ初動ファイティンこれ。
sorted things out and we're into the dropship.
All right, always fun to take advantage of the time where, you know, they're spending some quality time getting to know each other, talk about things as competitors often do when they're not competing in the dropship. And now, as they fall from the sky and land in their designated areas that they've worked out beforehand,
まだってるよ、これ。
it's all business, baby. We'll see if there's another
DIG。
amazing
あ、どこだっけ？
performance from Oblivion.
セノックス。
That would be a surprise. We've seen it before in North American days.
ドルフィンゲーミングさ、武器いいな。ランペフラトラは強いな。
We'll see if they've just got the rhythm. Another early
さっき持った。これそのまま行くんじゃね？パボックだ。さあ、コンジット。
Already that damage taken away, but it will slowly add 60 shield health over time. So as you can see, Stunny has worked it back in. And so it's essentially still a white shield. Not
フ
too
ラ
much
トラ、みんな
loss.
フラトラ持ってるのが強いな。
And I think this contest says a lot about Devastated Coast and Coastal Camp from these teams, that they are happier to contest here at Echo rather than playing either of those POIs, which are currently free. This is just asserting dominance in the early stages here in Pro League, I think. Saying, look, we've been doing it in scrims, but now let's make sure we win these in match one, in week one, so then we can start to solidify this as our drop spot. Let's make them blink first and then retreat to a arguably worse POI.
Do you think that this is a mistake in some ways? That
確か
can
に
only be done when you have the casuality of scrims as your reference
あ、
point?
あ、
Because
危な
I
い
don't know, if you lose two of these in a row, you are not looking
あ、
forward
受け終わら
to the third one. It's not
な
worth
ちま
it
ちま
if
ち
there
ま
are
ちま
two
そんな
to the left and the right.
行くんだよ
To just get 0 points.
いつものランクみたいにいっちゃおうよ
Map set
な
in a day like this.
行かないのこれ
Wait and see.
甘い街
And maybe at the end of the day, they'll
ラン
just
クだったら行くだろお前ら
each other.
ランクじゃねえってランクみたいにちゃんと見てるやつだから無理か甘えてねさあフェーズいやまずキャマかパンダいやーコンジットいるなさあ下打ちコンジット強えなマジでアーマー持った状態でファイトできるのマジ強え行くんだよなめめしい戦い方しやがってよランクはみんな突っ込むけどねちゃんと見てねえからランク見きょうだいテレビテレビテレビミットテレビミットいるよどこ投げてんのこいつ投擲練習求むいや PK 持ってるきついこれはホライド対決だいやー有利だあー強えホライゾン強え てか、ノックダウンから出たらやっぱり負けるよな。当たり前なんだけど。さあ、今回バロメーター。ノックダウンから突っ込んで勝つことほとんどないんだよな。俺が見てる感じだと。遮蔽なくなった瞬間終わりだからな。あれファイトしてないじゃん、下のやつ。エコー HQ のところファイトしてねえ。逃げやがった。
And station at the moment, a little bit of pylon in there as well, but you can see where the clutter is gathering as everyone trying to find themselves a position.
It's a little bit of a toss up into the air as to what makes a better
これ同居か。まあ、カタリスト壁ってか扉固めてから、まあ、そうそう攻めれるな、オプティックが。逆にオプティックはちょっとちょっかかけるか。オプティックもこれカタリストだね。カタリストガチで何割いんのこれ。9割いないか、ガチで。入れてないチームいた？カタリストそもそも。多分入れてないチームいないよな、これ。初動ファイトしてたドルフィンぐらいかな、マジで。ドルフィンと DNA 入れてなかったかな。忘れした。コントロールキャラだからね、アンチ読めるからね。ほぼ入れてるよね。みんな。オキシジンはホライゾンか。ホライゾンカターバンガ。イヤー3のメタ。エレベートもこの構成か。イヤー3メタ。バンガローホライゾンカタリストゲーなんですよ。
It's like two different types of students, right? You've got the genius who doesn't have to study and somehow aces the test every single time. To me, that looks like a TSM. You never know what they're going to do, but somehow they find a way to come out on top.
カタリスト強いよ。競技者強いよ。だってアンチ読めるもん。アンチ読めるし30秒耐久できるからな、ウルトで。競技者はぶっこれだね。ランクは別にそうでもないけど。
We know what we're going to get from them, and it's usually something very, very successful. Two different styles, two different outcomes potentially here as this game continues.
ランクは強いけどね、カタリスト。強いけどね。強いけどランクで必要なのはやっぱりパワーだね。キャラパワー。守りなんかいらないんですよ。押せないんですからね、ランクは。
I think for Snipe Down, I apologize for continuing to use that. I think I'm just caught up in my vernacular, but I would say it's an interesting choice too for Snipe Down to trust Zeratricky and Panders in this new role and to say this is the
パッシブ超強いマジで。こもるからな。こもれるからね。わあ、これオキシの方読んじゃねこれ。TSM アンチ遠いからクラフトしてキュアムーブだね。LG これ第3読みいったからな。さあ DN をこちら入るか。さあ上からタックからこれは一旦橋行きたい。さあ一旦前張り付き。チャーライ。チャーライっすよ、チャーライ時代は。スモークス。
Yes, they will. No problem there. Top of barometer, Bursty. Dan Mantic just going to do the best they can to ward off any
attempts. ドゥープコールオフラインあるからな。ドゥープって。ドゥープコール。ブーイングみたいに聞こえるから。
An opportunity for another team nearby as we switch over to TSM. The story undoubtedly in North America, the team to win 2 out of 3 last year at LAN and of course
カタリストの弱体化は言うてそこまでだね。俺の中では。競技シーンは別に何も上がってないと思う。もうアンチメルだけで強いし。
And with the same squad returning, that's going to be something that a lot of people expect.
おー、ヘルメットなんですよ。やっぱヘルメット作らないとね。極しいね、アーマー育たないしね。クレーバー持たれたらワンパンボーンだからね。運ゲークレーバー食らっちゃうから。ヘルメット。まあ、ランクも作った方がいいけどね。チート対策になるし。ヘルメット。ローマ積んでんだけど、アペギャング。さあ、ターナリーし、こっちの形採用しない。こちらもファイトムーブか。リングコンソールなんか読まねえよって。大きなムーブっすね。キルで分からせる。
Really fun fight, very good hot drops.
これはザンパッドだね。
Engagements, a lot of ways to play it. Low ground, high ground, inside those buildings. So far though, just gonna pass each other. Sweet, Slayer, Funk.
LG はどうつった？
Knows when it's time to take a fight, when it is time to move on and find something better. Eternal feel the same way. And with Carter's heroics earlier on, they want to push it. Happy to be alive here.
ループコールはブーイングだから。ブーイングに聞こえるからな。雑誌オイル。プラチナまでやっと初めてヘルメットですね、気づいた。ヘルメットゲーですよ。昨日の AN 見てると、最終エンドの肩壁がファイトの血になるからポジションリーダーが敵に先に戦わせたいってプランが崩れるのが面白かった。カタリストで戦況変わるからな、このゲーム。簡単に。
Zach Mazer. It's been, I mean, this he is one of those players that truly just has always been a part of the NA scene. Whether it's been the highs and the lows, I mean, from getting to land Cloud9 and catching COVID.
またこいつ足を立ってるバカだ。なんで動くのこいつら。止まってるよ車で。バレる決まってんだろ。ハイドなってないなマジで。なんでハイドするときにさ、マジで思うんだよ。武器チェンしたり足を立ったらなんですんのか分かんねえじゃん。止まってりゃいいじゃん。なんか落ち着きねえやつ結構いるんだよね、ガチで。マジでぶっ殺せるし。いやマジでさ、本当にあるんだよ。足音立ったりするの今のチラチラチラチラ。何考えてんのかなって。まあやるにわかんだよ。音の範囲分かってねえんだよ、単純な話。動いたらしゃがみ歩きは音出てねえって思ってる人いっぱいいるからな、このゲーム。いや音出るからね、ちなみに。武器チェもそうだけど、強いもんすな。やっぱキーマンはカーっすよね。キーマンはカーだよな。さあオフティックやっときた。お、いけそう。だってねえだもんって。武器チェ音出てない人とか、音出ないって思ってる人絶対いるよ。上手い人でもね、分かってないんじゃない？リアルに。
And this rotation is going to be a tight one.
I mean, over half the lobby is outside of this next circle, and they're all going to have to start inching their way in, but they're going to be exposed to the other teams who are nearby.
ちょっと興奮しちゃって落ち着きなくなっちゃうね。ハイドがなってねえな。ハイドの練習しないのかなみんな。もったいないね。足を立っただけで負けちゃうのもったいないわ。だって明らかにバレてなかったからな、ちなみに。波動です。止まったらいいじゃん。止まんないと。きついね、これ、SKRT。これ、コンジトルト投げて。なんか、ツーパからコンジトルト投げられてる、こいつら。やばすぎ！かわいそう！ツーパから投げられてんだけど。 しかもこれ車線切るキャラがバンガしかいない。ああ、無理だ。これはさあ、ダークゼロしかもいいし、ゲット1人。本時取ると2パーやばいな、これ。終わってるわ。さすがに積んでたね、今の。アルブラックぶち切りですか、これ。さあ、ダークゼロはどうだ？扉開いてるよ。あ、2人の方押して、取り切るんじゃないかな、これ。デュープレックスやば。アークで3人持ってった。
And when it does, you can fly through the air, sometimes unnoticed. Optic eliminated, GKS also eliminated. Eternal down to a 2, but at least able to put down some good damage as a squad at the moment just to make themselves big. But there are plenty of teams in the area which could prove to be difficult for them when they do make their rotation from this northern side. It's Dark
Zero to DNO.
Elsewhere, look at all the teams here on the southern side. LG, Ape, FaZe, Flat, they're all here fighting.
いやー、スモークの中やだね。結構当たるな。言いました関係ねえからな、プロマジで。こんなに。あったらまんまができるけど、なくてもそこそこ当たる。蘇生からする。さあ、LG これ今日降ってるね。LG いいっすね。倒し切りたいね。とりあえず。やばい、ぶっぱ来てる。
They're the star of the show. Let's listen in and see how they handle it.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Batting the can. I'm holding for you. I'm most likely going to literally hit the fucking can. Can I make it? Can I make it? Yes, you can make it. Okay, we're safe on this wall right now. We're safe on this wall. We have full control of this little hill right here, guys. We probably are just gonna play close side island, okay? On my yellow. Yes, yes. We're probably gonna play. We're gonna walk. We're gonna wall one direction. Play the other side of the wall. Shoot behind us. Shoot these fuckers.
Focus.
Bottom door and pre-arcing in front of them.
40.
60 flash, 60 flash, 60 flash. One, he's literally one. So I think we play for these kills. I do. Just keep on the cannon, close. On our cannon. We just play the one. They died. Go cannon.
だい。ザイには取った。これ前張れそうじゃね？カタリスルトで。強。その、すげえ、島から撃たれにしてる。
There's no one here. Just show I'm nading this. Get in. Closing the gap. Closing the gap.
そう、一旦張り付け。え、これ別パラね。これはきついね。
They're hard fighting. Yeah, comms. Just give me comms. Let me know what you see, okay? Let me know if you see knocks.
They ran into oblivion in both senses of the word. Sweet, the only one alive. Arcology Akimbo holding down the central space. Dark Zero and LG, the other two.
TSM ちゃんと残ったらやば。
TSM has made their way to the southern side though.
TSM しかも結構車線消えるとこにね、まあスモーク立ててるけども、岩の上でどうなのこれ。すごい、ちゃんと取り切るのやばいな。ヘムロック入る。やっぱヘムロックなんだよな。やっぱクラップするよな、ヘムロックは。やっぱレベル違うもんな。ライフルの中でも一番強い。近距離も戦えるのが強すぎんだよな、ヘムロックマジで。中距離だけじゃなくて腰精度いかれてるからな。NA は中ムーブしかいないんじゃない、ほぼほぼ。ああ、いってるよー。パパパパパパパパパ忘れて座れた。やばい。そのはずが強すぎるだろ。さあ LG スイート、これはキルパクしに来たね。お、待って、ワンワンこれ。待って、スイートこれパクれるぞ、キル。ワンチャン。いったらしかし相手強い。守備強い。じゃあプラウラ20発。プラウラか今の。プラウラ強すぎるよな。マジで他の SMG 弱体化されたのにプラウラが16打目のこのスーパーレートだからな。ぶっ壊れたよなマジで。35発しかも。
also love it from Sweet as well, by the way, taking advantage of teams looking at each other.
強っマジ
Actually, maybe I can get involved. Actually, Shubi gets that kill. KP added.
ダークゼロ TSM オキシジンかな。やべえ、スーパー強いとこは3チーム残った。あ、これダークゼロ当たってくれたらこれ TSM のチャンスだな。しかしこれは 3-0 か。だポジ的にはどうだ、ダークゼロか。さあ最強対決、最強対決。さあウルトがない。うわー、しかしこれダークゼロ先いった。いやー、エヴァンバースサイクズ強いマジ CEO あー TSM おお、あ TSM か。これレッツゴーしてる今。これレッツゴーしてるな。すえー、サイクズも超やばかったよね今。でリピーターの個人チェッククソ強えなこのゲームマジで。
But a great fight. I mean, the initial damage by Zero, I thought that maybe they had the lead in the fight, but Verhost managing to turn on them, do the damage, take down Zero before he fell was very impressive indeed. And TSM back on top, and now we have our teams who are in first and second place. Dark Zero.
今のシャレだね。翻訳 TSM 翻訳動画上がるよこれ多分。翻訳。
I think a much bigger showing of their mid game there and their early late game because they had several fights that went their favor. They got a lot of extra KP there and they kind of demanded attention for quite a while. So other teams really forced the fight themselves. No one was trying to push them.
いやリピーター最強だガチで。リアルに適当にしゃがまなくてもね腰当たるからなリピーター。超強いマジで。変わってないっすね。弱体が言ったけど。
It just ended up being all the fighting happening near the Dragon Ball on the left side was too attractive for them, and I think they thought easy KP.
7キルダークゼロのポイント上なんだけど12キルだった。強っ。なんだこれ。はい。強えな NA は。
Overall here, 21 TSM with the actual victory and maybe the moral victory or the emotional victory against DC, but Oxygen Esports, Elevate Gaming, and LG round out your top 5 with a shout out to Oblivion, who again have a pretty solid game too.
Yeah, I think if you were to go back and watch the rotations of TSM, Dark Zero, and LG, all very interesting in their own way, but all brilliant IGLs showing why they have the achievements under their belt that we've been able to see across the years, because there were some very interesting decisions made, but also ones that were very important to keep their team alive at the right time. And then a final 3v3 like that, I mean, we'd love to see those engagements happening time and time again when you get straight 3v3s. Sure, Dark Zero taking a little bit of damage, but they still did have an opportunity in that final engagement. As for other squads, plenty of points picked up by the top 10, but there were also the ones who struggled in the early game, whether it was down to losing an early contest or just getting peeled off by other squads holding their rotation. The bottom 10 looks this way.
IGL ってそうだね。パワーもあるしな。
You could take some losses in a way that feel like wow.
リアルに IGL ゲーだからな。
Look at the points, you look at the overall value. Dark Zero has to keep the mentality that we had a great game there, even though they lost not only the team that they were fighting for in terms of LAN championships last year, but the team that is, I think, their spiritual rival here in terms of winning the entire thing.
ダークではリピーターいっぱい打ってて、ダメージ高いね。キルも取れてたし。
Head focused on where you're going, Dan, and in terms of average placements, in terms of kills, and specifically damage, Dark Zero edging out the tally on that.
Yeah, and you can see this is the comparison of their match 1 rather than match 2, and it shows how similar their match days have been. Match 1 was a situation where they both kind of came 5th and 6th, and then match 2 was a scenario where they end up in 1st and 2nd, and that's why there's only a point to split them at the moment. Two teams who are very closely contested, but it shows that Dark Zero, with this new change, they are up there and they are competing well with TSM. Let's go to a break, everyone.
おはようございます。レップスいるよ。 配信始めたい OB 設定してた。おー、偉いね。何しなくてあるんですか、プロリーグ。6、5までは予選、6が決勝。ザイに最強だったのに。最強だったね。
But of course, that championship banner, and of course, I would say maybe a moral victory in the final 3v3 fight certainly went to TSM.
And also, you know, there's always a chance of bonus points if you can get victories on the board. Remember, there could be one extra point if we see TSM get 4 victories today. Will we see it?
ドーグズル1位と TSM 2位。おー。
But these are the series results from the first 2 matches. Dark Zero lead the way with 30 points. TSM just one behind them on 29. So it's very closely contested at the top 2. But after that, Oblivion still featuring in the top 3 on 24. But then it's all to play from there below. Mark, anyone can jump
強いよな、競技心的には。
all it takes is one good game.
It does indeed. A little bit of a surprise. Of course, we're only 2 games in. See Optic Gaming struggling a little bit. It was a
TSM はね、アンチが解いてが外ムーブ。近い時の赤ムーブ。
maybe a little bit more accessible, but still some ground to be traveled for them. So they'll be hoping something a little bit closer to home. Phase with some decent points on the board as well. But
取り手はね、めっちゃ多いね。取り手も球持ちいいからな。
especially in North America that we see.
取り手強えよ。まあ、ランクで使う武器じゃないんだけどね。ランクも結構えぐいけどな、個人的に。面白い。取り手強いよ。ちなみに。
We all know the story there. This is what's happened though, of course. TSM with the win in game number 2. Oblivion with the game win, excuse me, in game number
エアも増えて使うね。いや、取り手も球持ちかなりいいからな。ランクで取り手持つの結構楽しいけどね。結構面白いけどな。
We won't really talk about true stats until we start to get into the thick of it with match play because it's very different with people taking a lot.
わあ、またやったのよ。さあ、フェイズ。今度はフェイズ負けた。そしてパンダと取り返すワンマが。多分。さあ、そしてスナイプさん大丈夫？言うてフェイズパッド3だからな。クソ強いよ、初動勝ちで。ちゃんと見てるな。コンジとか。キンスコってね、これエグ最初から。これはずるいわ。これはずるいっす。降りてきた。すげえ。マジか。パンダーツフェイズかなんか徒歩勢いる。徒歩勢いる。やばー、寄ってきた。これもハットだね。モザン RE アベックスイズ。あ、多い先輩いる。シークレットフォーミュラ。あと3分の2ぐらいいるのかな。多分2回の多いよな、リアルに。多分。どうなんだろう。
our right to loot up and get into this game and work our way towards end zone, and instead we're thinking about just surviving for now. Pandas double time on his side with the Bangalore, but you can see that he's being chased.
それを入ったらこれやられるからね、結構もう終わってるような。キーマーから移行した人もいるかな。どうなんだろう。あれ
？There's no way he didn't see him.
I wanted to be quiet for him there. I didn't even
しかし昨日のエーパクのさ、キーマウス3がね、トップ3だからな。これフォーカス合わせる。さあ、これこのまま攻めるね。うん。引いたからね、今言っていいんだよね。カバーされないから。さあ、ドルフィン。ブラハーキーマーだね。あ、ホライゾンもキーマーっぽいな。本日はパッドだね。
Mostly the time they're coming out of that contest with blues, and that usually is a pretty good indication. But again, they have to be careful of any third parties arriving. Here is your map, though. Now the, shall we say, the early fisticuffs is done and dusted, and everybody is on the map. This is where we're going to be going. It's looking pretty central, maybe down towards Barometer again.
うわー、ダークゼロ、これはどこだ？最強位は取るか？
Give your hat off, or take your hat off to Secret Formula. They were losing the battle at Northpad, so they dropped just slightly east, and it allowed them to loot up in the building and then join the fight that was happening at the wall. It was a well-strategized plan, albeit an annoying one for FaZe. Circle, we're going to be heading west over towards.
エーパックのスターもう多分最強位がいるんで、これ。収縮中じゃないのもう。わかんないけど。もう収縮してるもん。ああ、遅いね、NA。NA 遅いね、若干。動き出しが。なるほどね。だって A パックロンスだったらこれ、やべえはあれ運転ミスった？なんか動けなかったね、車。やばい、ダークゼロ、積む。コンジットいるから、まあ言うてまだあるね。
The conduit available so they can craft those banners, but it's about getting to a crafter and it's about being able to get the res off. It's not an easy thing to do with so many squads making their move. Very different when you're playing in ranked and teams will go down a lot earlier and you're able to just get those resurrections off a lot more comfortably. Now, Dropping Gaming, after having that early contest, they are going to be moving very quickly, or as quick as possible, away from PLP, who are now looking to see if they can pick up any of the stragglers, knowing that that contest had happened.
Gonna hit the evac here. It looks like they want to be really aggressive on this, and that's exactly what they are going to do. They are chasing this down. They are running.
この3人突っ込まれるのちょっと怖えね、相手。泣いちゃうね、これ。この3人突っ込まれるの。一旦空爆投げて、これは下がらせる。あれでカバーできなかったら東側行くんじゃない？東一人でよ。あ、東カバー行った。あ、シェドリルか。一旦引くと。さあ、飛べ取った。ファイト構成だからな、ドルフィン。なかなかすごいよ。さあ、一旦上から攻める。さあ、3人固まってるね。さあ、どんどん攻める。後ろいるんじゃねえ説出てきた。さあ、一旦フォーリーとザイに固まってる。いいね。ちゃんと2人固まってんの。ただブラハちょっと見つけられなかった。固まってるね。いいですね。ちゃんとカバーできるチームいる。ちゃんとパッドでこういう連携されたらリアルに多分勝てないよ、キーマーズで。ちなみにエーパーフロンサーとキーマーの連帯やっぱ連携強いけど、パッドでこれしたら多分無敵だぞ、ガチで。
PLP, they're the guys who are just throwing hands at everyone. But this is a fight that's going to go on for quite some time, and the zone has decided, hey, can we just move away? Like, follow me, guys. And that's what they have to do. Dropping Gaming survived for now, but now the problem is if they want to take this fight, they're going to have to take zone damage on their way towards.
おっとー、オキシジン。オキシジン負けんのこれ。誰相手？ TSM だ。ヘムロッカーなんですよ。さあ、速攻で丸見てる。さあ、ただこれは余裕だね、体力的にも。さあ、オキシジンを圧倒していく。やば。
2 minutes until the zone closes, so TSM don't have to move as fast as perhaps they thought they would have if that fight had gone on for too long. But they
レップスも99だ。レップスは99信者だもんな。さあ、最強が取ったのエレベートか。ダークゼロ車を使って、まあこれ、ジェンバって蘇生しないかな。だからコースタルキャンプ行ったらドロフィンいるんだよな。これやばいね。まあいないと思ってんだろうな、これ。ドロフィン絶対これハイドして。やばい、絶対ダークゼロ。ダークゼロ絶対やばい。やばい、やばい。絶対気づいてない。いやでも撃たれたか、今。今撃たれたか。やばい！前にいる、前にいる、前にいる、前にいる、前にいる。さあ、コンジトルトで一旦足止め。ウルトも投げていくよ、全部。さあ、ゼロぶち切れっすね。なんでまだいいんだ、手がねえよって。やべえ！終わったー！
the trident. I mean, they're taking a lot of damage here as Dark Zero just do what they can to try and survive. Sykes says, you know what, screw it, let's just keep going.
はあ、助けて死ぬー
have a breathalyzer. They are all over the place, but they get the job done. They survive for now, but what are the meds looking like? Because you would have thought they would have played for the economy of being able to get that.
ヘブロック2枚ね。ヘブロックゴッドゴブゴッドだが。
Over down on the southern side of coastal camp and then getting back into the game. But now they're in zone, and now they're probably thinking, hey, it's plan B. We might have.
フラットこれ後ろ見てなくない？え、なんで後ろ見ないのこれ？終わったこいつら。そしたら終わってんな。え？これランク？ランクこれ？後ろカットしてない？えぐ？え、ランクやってるこいつら。ランク民か？嘘だろ？死にましたと。なんで切んないんだろう。俺の中ではありえない。ランクやってるな、これ。まあ、ランク名は後ろ見ないんだよな。しかし、これプロリーグだぞ。甘えてんな、さすがにこれは。これ絶対やっちゃいけないからね、ちなみにだけど。後ろ見ないんだね。まあ、やられてるんだけどね。やられてるからこれダメなんだけどね。ちなみにフリーで3人撃てても絶対1人後ろなんだよね。なんだか絶対来たら死ぬから。で、前のやつでキルコキルだけだからな。あれ撃っちゃダメだね。ちなみに日本勢は多分やらないと思うあれ。で、上手いチーム絶対やんないね。あんな3人同じ方向見るっていうのは。うん。TSM が3人ずっとあれ撃つかった話だよね。後ろ見ないで。ないよね。あれは間違いですし、皆さん真似しちゃダメです。ランクでもやっぱあれはダメだからな。ちなみに。いや、ランクでもいるよ。ランクでもうまいやつは見る。てか、あれ、後ろ怖いって思わないのかな逆に。誰かが見てると思ったとかなのかななんだろうな。リアルにどんな VC してんだろう。こいつら撃て !3 人で撃てって言ってんのかなマジで。ありえない。ありえないぞ。うんこした。でもプロリーグ上がるチームであんなことやっちゃうんだね。勢い、まあ、リアルにランクの感覚でってのかもしれない。まあ、競技経験ないとやっちゃうのかもしれないね、普通に。単純な話だけど。やべえ、顔落とされたやばザイニュいけザイニュパワー見せてくれ。いやー、同じ方向に行きたいよね。挟んでいくか。ベッパいる、危ねえ。いやー、ここの3パットガチ強えな。やばいな。いや、後ろ見るよ。一人絶対見るよ。
Trying to find a place to maybe just reset and maybe thinking about ratting, but I've got a bit impressed by PLP. I have to say with their fighting, you just see that natural kind of baiting and switching, and a lot of that comes from communication, right? Not only
ちゃんと固まってるのが強いんだよな。固まってるパットなんか絶対勝てないからな。ただここはフリーで撃たれちゃったな。
Yeah, Skirt came in for the third party, catching PLP whilst they were kind of still looting after that fight, and now they might not even be able to take this evac tower because another team going to be in
evac tower. Evac. やべえ。フレックスがなんか絡まれてるのかこれ。これ絡まれてるのかやば。アルブラ絡まれてる。違うアルバたちもかなり苦しくねこれ。ダークがこれ復活してるね。ゼロはいるか。ゼロどっかいる。いるね。ゼロ G7 だ。G7 だよな。 G7 ガチで強えよな。さ、キンスコ。バンガローのキンスコ確定で持ってる。さあ、これ前入れるね。いいね。でもこれ絡まれてね。これ魚振ってキルパ稼いでいけるね。ただ風船があるかないからな。結構移動が苦しそう、この後。まあ、バンが勝ったりするから一番なんとかなるか。裏入れ。さあ、カバー。うちへ行くな、これ。はいはいはいはい。ちょっと左行くの怖かったけどね、正直。バルキリーはゼロじゃね？見てないな、NA は。まあ、バルはな移動できるだけだからな最終勝てないからな、バルはリアルに。あと今風船があるしね、風船でいいんだよな、リアルに。やべ。まあバンがスモークでカタリストウルトで IMC 目指すんのかな。風船ないしね。さあ、そうね、バンがスモークカタリストっていきそうだけどね。いくね、やっぱり。うん、まあそうですよね。一旦ファイトだね、これもうとりあえず取り切り。ただこれ集落から後ろ来る可能性があるからな。ある時間あるね、正当時間あるね。キャンキャン。あ、いないかこれ。展開してるだけか。さあ、ローバルトある。あっちー。何促進剤でそんな興奮すんのこれ。促進剤でそんな興奮すんのこれ。どういうことわかんねえ。なんで言ってた今。促進剤あるって。クソ喜んでたよ、ゼロ今。どういうことわかんねえけど。まあ、硬いスロット貯めて移動できるようにしたか。だから興奮してたんか今。あちーって。すごいな。促進剤つけただけでそんな興奮するやつ初めて見た俺今。大興奮。さあ LG はこれは言うて前入るでいいだけか。ノージュ出た。ノージュ出たね、促進剤見つけた瞬間。TS これ LG が後ろから来る可能性があるからそんくらいかな。怖いの言うてやっぱゴチ取り強いな。 TS もガチムーブやばくね。知らねえじゃんガチで。えぐくね。こんだけムーブ綺麗にできるのやばくない普通に。強っ。いやマジ。いや強っ。いやマジでさ今のさ耐えやばいよね。ALGS解除してパッとでさああいう時間稼ぎできる人マジねえぞ。ちなみにまあ俺が結構コーチに言った話だね。自分がヘイト買った瞬間 ALGS解除して時間稼げっていう。死なないように移動速度上げて生存時間伸ばしてその間に味方にカバーしてもいいからっていう話めっちゃしてたんだよね。コーチング動画撮ってる時ちゃんとバースやってるわ。えらえら。やっぱプロスはレベルちげえなガチで。キーマンはね結構やる人いたんだけどね、パッとでガチいなかったんだよな。本当になんか打ち合っちゃう人がめっちゃ多かった。そのままリアルにもう当たんなくてもいいから生存時間伸ばすんだよね。で生存してる時間分だけ味方が横から撃てるからな。ALGSして生存時間をね減らす人はマジで終わってるね。立ち回りとしてはちょっとうんこだね。あ、元キーマンは確かに強いね。そういうのできる。男気バットしちゃうね、バット勢ガチで。さあ、エレベーター、こちら最強や取ったからね、上取れてんね。あとは一人死んでるか。これダークセルとこ行くか。でもホライゾン積んでないからな。でも後ろから行くか。うわー、食い分ける。さあ、でもこれ行くんじゃない？あー、無理か。登れないか。ホライゾン積んでないのがね、風船でもあるな。風船どうだろう。さあ、エレベーター復活。シュビドゥー。TSM どうだアンチは。さあ、一旦一方的。アンチ入ってる。あ、強えー。強えー。アンチ入ってるし、これなんなら最強位はホライゾンで取りいけるぞ。 空爆あって、さあダークゼロもちゃんと残ってる。ダークゼロちゃんと残ってる。バースティはどこのチームだ？アペギャングか。まあ、エレベーター残んなあかんだよ。最強が強いから、これ。だから TSM とダークゼロちゃんとムーブして生き残ってるのやっぱ、やばいね。レベチ。リアルレベチだね。まあ、ここは最強が取ってたら絶対残れるところだからね。どのチームも残れる。ちなみに。外れるまでは負けないね。でもやっぱその、勘違いからちゃんと生き残るチームはガチで強い。TSM、セルが1個はバッテリー持った。あ、これで回復大丈夫だね。さあ、先に動かなきゃいけないのがエレベートっぽいね、これ。うん。これ TSM 有利だね。まあ有利なんだけど、ダークゼロが TSM 仕掛けるのかな？岩の下張り付くのかな？どうなんだろう。一応岩の下張り付いて、まあ上の人たちと TSM を共闘して倒すみたいなのはできんね。あ、下のハイドからやるの？あ、違う、これ逆が取り行くんだ。あ、TSM 押すんだ、これ挟ませるんか。あと岩上多分もう切れなくなってるから早めに降りたのか。でもこれどうなんだろうね。難しいね。TSM これまだ残ってんじゃない壁。これ TSM 有利じゃね？だから壁最後にたける、おそらくだけど。うん、多分後出しした瞬間勝ちだね、これも。さあ、当たってる。やはり TSM か、これは。効率にしていた TSM、これだけを振るだけだ。スッパー、わお。しかしこれエレベーター3人持ってるか。しかし振り打ちだ。返された。まあさすがに持つ。まあ負けないでしょう。うわー、2連ウィンか、マジか。強よ。TSM 強え。ムーブが最強すぎる。アンチ外からアンチ外がちゃんと入って勝つのやべえ。どういうムーブしたか知らんけど。これはイージー。もしやっぱレベルが次元ちげえ。世界。やっぱ世界か。世界の脳みそ安定してるね。さあ今日1位通過か。2連ウィンはやばいね。ダークゼロも3位だけど。Just got absolutely decimated in the first team fight that we saw them in against TSM, and then we saw the fight against Eternal, and it didn't even look close. You know, the amount of damage that was coming out of the Hemlock of Verhost, and you quite rightly said, like, that gun is still incredibly strong if you can take the time to チャンネル上だね、これは。チャンピオン取れば取るほど TSM の再生数上がる。1位通過って。ウハウハ。12キル取ったら強。でもダークゼロも9キル取ってんの？あの状況で強すぎじゃね
？And you always wonder when you go from a world championship into a new season, is the best in the world
一生最強だね。TSM
changes going to affect them, is new legends going to affect how they approach the game, and TSM still performing well in this meta and starting the season just where they left off. So I'm sure TSM fans will be more than happy with the performance that we've seen so far, but we have to also shout out the consistency of Dark Zero and how impressive it was that Dark Zero even got to that point. They had their backs against the wall for the majority of the game, were able to get back up to a full 3, and they pull out 9 kills alongside it, so still a very impressive performance from them.
Yeah, very, very strong performance from them. Elevate as well, 16 points for them, and I mentioned in the pre-show that this is a team to watch because I feel like there's something good brewing.
3部隊やられたわけだね。まあ TSM しかも多分壁残ってたはずだからね、あれ。エレベーターも多分岩目がきついと思ってもう降りちゃったね。どれが正解なんだろうね。まあ TSM とりあえず1人落としたらよかったけど。いいか。
Well, speaking of quiet games, our bottom 10 was still featured at points. It's not too many zeros. Teams still able to pick up KP and pushing their fights when they are available to them. Temper and FaZe after having that initial contest. Sadly for FaZe, even despite the fact they won it, they were pushed by Secret Formula, who had moved from their initial contest to take another one and take a third party off of FaZe. So unfortunately, FaZe won't have a chance to respond to that.
そんなことないんじゃない？
But certainly interesting to see teams changing their drop spot.
言ってメンバー変えていきなりうまくいく方がなかなかないけどな。
Great showcase of not only what this lobby can offer, but TSM and how to IGL towards success. When you look at the videotape, my goodness, I had a chance to watch the first game that we were casting, seeing TSM win against Dark Zero. They walked up on that final two fight the same way they walked up on the final two fight right here. They are just putting themselves in positions to win. And of course, you guys gave us your thoughts on it in-game. Mark, Dan, I want to bring in A Jayhawk, who's joining us now yet again. It's been a minute, Jay. You know, we had a chance to talk to you in EMEA. Now it's North America. You've been familiar with all these regions, but this region is star-studded. How are you feeling? And for everyone as well who maybe didn't see your EMEA broadcast, catch us up with what's going on in your life.
Yeah, so I work a full-time job, but I'm actually going part-time to commit more time to Apex content. So that's super exciting. And living up to the excitement is North America. That first game was wild. I got to jump around from different streams. PLP with Phony, their comms were going crazy. TSM, Dark Zero, so many great teams.
対戦に対して向こうの実況者で有名な人なのかな？いやー、どうなんだろうね。そんなにじゃない。そんなになんかフォロワーいなかった気ですけど。
Yes, it certainly is an incredible day. I think everyone's been looking forward to the action kicking off, and I think you have to give a lot of respect to the IGLing we've seen so far. And the play calls, understandably, I'm going to say from Zero and How, because they've been two teams who have been involved in those last two games and those final fights. It's a masterclass, right, to watch these guys do what they do.
Yeah, I mean, they're the best in the world for a reason. A clash of the titans, if you will.
あれどうなんだ？解説陣で選手とかやってたのかな？あんまりわかんないけどね。
They're the best, and they're going to continue to show it throughout the splits. It's not surprising. We've seen them do this for years, so to see them continue to do it in day one, I mean, everybody knew this was coming.
Yeah, seeing the differences between EMEA and NA has been clear as well.
あんまり詳しくねえからわかんないけど俺は。
You really picked up on in differences, Jayhawk?
I did think that, I mean, we talked about this during the EMEA broadcast. The teams that had that direction
今喋ってる人は Just Duel Who Games and Makes ALGS Videos だって ALGS のビデオ作ってる人ってどの人？
TSM coming all the way from Lightning Rod down to the south side of the map and winning 2 games in a row where they don't have priority. They're having to play
結構偉い人かこの人。
their way in. I mean, obviously they're the best team in the world for a reason, so we're not surprised they're doing it, but it is different from EMEA where based on where the circles are, you can tell who was going to win that game.
Well, speaking of circles, I mean, we have some final circles here to look at as well, Jayhawk, just as we did in EMEA. I mean, you said match 1 was exciting and you were bouncing around. What did you see between all the streams?
Yeah, this game was wild because I thought immediately we were going to get the Clash of the Titans. TSM, DZ, LG, Elevate, all these teams were looking like they were going to get to the end, but they don't. LG gets eliminated here, and we have a final 3 of Skirt, Complexity, and Oblivion. And I loved it because these are 3 teams that have something to prove. Complexity with a roster change. Skirt is a unit of multiple
でも結構長いよね、歴。解説陣変わってないね、メンバー。実況もそうだけど。
Really great end game, and I loved that to start off North America. Some teams that
でもなんか背の高い人見てないな最近。 サウスの人じゃなくて。
I mean, obviously, game 1.
なんかクソでかい人いたんだよね、初期の方。
Are going to be rotating well. They've practiced their storm point enough. Game 2 certainly gave us that information as well as we kind of see close out here. You thought maybe Sweet would get his first win. No. Arcology, Oblivion, Complexity, they would be in the mix, and they grabbed this one. But I want to talk to you about something I noticed and see if you've kind of picked up on this as well. For me, there's a timing thing to being in the right spot. We saw in game 2, Optic, they were positioned extremely well inside, you know, near Barometer, and they were kind of in zone early. But the teams that seemed to have the biggest impact in that late game ended up being the TSMs, the DZs, who got there a little later. And I'm just wondering how much that timing you're seeing play as a part of actually changing the tide versus just being in the right spot and maybe a little bit too early.
I do think it's important. Even Oxygen, who we just saw die in third there, they were sitting in that spot almost the entire game, waiting for Circle to come right in front of them. But everybody knows that you're there. You've been a target in people's minds for so long that all of a sudden when TSM and DZ just come in, you're having to readjust to this newfound information, and that adjustment sometimes doesn't come out quick enough. And when you're going against the best teams in the world, they capitalize on that brief hesitation.
It's kind of a weird thing, you know, but it's the old idea of the, you know, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Doing the punching in terms of Apex terms really does allow you to be the one, I think, maybe with the step forward. This one, though, interesting. Do you think DZ and EA just decided, hey, best we can play for a second here, or was this just the nature of how these catalyst walls set up?
I think realistically, based on the positions that TSM had, they had the most cover, so naturally the other two teams are just going to duke it out and see what happens. But I do want to shout out E8 here because we've been singing the praises of TSM and DZ. E8 has been dominating in scrims, and the question was, can they continue it in Pro League match days? They're doing it right now. They're looking fantastic. In that game too, they finished in 4th with 9 points. Here they get 16 in this game. They're living up to those expectations that they were setting for themselves in scrims.
And here are the final points, as you mentioned, TSM Dark Zero Elevate. They go step and step in terms of not just their
53秒で、しかしダークゼロなかなか近いねこれね。オブリビオンは初回チャンピオンだったけどそこまで稼げんじゃない。なるほどですね。
Taking a look at this entire roster, A versus BJ Hawk, since we have you here, what's maybe the biggest story you're looking at now for the second half, our next transition into our last 3 games on World's Edge?
Well, I'm looking at Optic Gaming all the way down in 17th with 6 points.
そうだね、メタだからもうほぼ実力だね。
team that dominated in that finals lobby at Champs, and they have not quite shown up yet, but I'm not going to give up. This isn't a team that goes down easy, and going to World's Edge with the POI.
構成で勝負しないところはもう実力だね、リアルに。
I'm expecting Optic to bounce back in a big way because I just can't see a world in which Optic is finishing 17th on the day.
Mark, I'm going to lead it to you as well. Any thoughts on what we need to see in this?
NA のボーダーっていうか世界大会行けるのは12チームだね。一番多い。
I think Optic have been so quiet in those first 3 games. It's almost a surprise to see them there. It always is a surprise to see them down there. But the teams at the top of the world expect to be there. And like I mentioned, me and Jayhawk seem to be thinking the same thing at the moment because I was thinking about Elevate and what they've been doing in the build-up to this. Could they produce it here in round number 1? Well, they're doing it so far, but we're only halfway through. That's the crazy thing, right? It's very easy to take your foot off the gas.
仕事行ってきます。ミラーシャンありがとうございます。いいでしょう。今が仕事が。いいですね。
Then the contest change. All of this changes up halfway through. So it's about concentrating on the job ahead and not kind of patting yourself on the back too early here for Elevate. But I'm excited to see what they can do on World's Edge.
注目がいっぱいあるよ。
So AJ Hop, before we let you go, I kind of wanted to give you a chance to do what you
注
do.
目チームいっぱいあるよ。
You know, part-time, so it's going to be more of these videos hopefully heading out. Every video starts with what story do I want to tell? Over the course of today, we've kind of titled it the Great Reset on our
TSM しかし C チームと当たるときにね、初動ファイトあるからね、TSM は。それが怖いね。ユリースのチームは今日出てないんじゃない？何のチームかわかんないけど。TSM が硬い人出たとき、苦労してた。
At some point, someone else has to win a LAN, right? But if you look at the story from these two teams' POVs, they don't want to go down. They don't want to be the team that finally falls off and somebody else takes the throne. And so, you know, as much as we want to tell other stories and talk about the other teams,
仕事中、おお、今年日本勝ってほしいな。どうなんすかね。SMG 弱くなっちゃったしね、ちょっとパッド系じゃなくなっちゃったからな。しかもキロ見てわかるけど、キーマウズで3人がトップ3だからな。ちょっとどうなんすかね。ちょっとどうなんすかね。エビなんちゃってチームユリス。嘘。4チームの推しはね、YouTube の動画上がってるのでそこ見てください。そっちがわかりやすいです。
All right, check them out. And hey, thanks again, man. We'll see you on future broadcasts. I'm
リジェクトあります。リジェクトもあるけどね。 NA の見てるとやっぱり、パッドで連携してるからクソ強い。マジで。パッドで連携してる。バースに関しては ADS 解除して時間稼いでるさ、パッドだし、やばすぎるね。マーサーのキーボードで言った？パッドで時間稼ぐのはやばいね。マジで、マジで強い。なんであんなに普通に使うの知らねえ。やっぱ韓国でレベル違えからな。文化が違うからな。プロゲーマー文化。そうでも3キーマーじゃないね。海外パッドだらけだね。NA パッド多い。半分はパッドだと思う。3分の2ぐらい多分いいと思うけどね、俺。エイマジスト、エイマジスト。そう、ミートとショラツ、ミートラバーズ。どうでもデザインパッターンのそうなんだ。
As far as the TSM conduit is going, I don't think we'll see it right now because they're not contested on Siphon. So I think you might see TSM. We saw a little bit of Fuse yesterday coming back into the equation. Should I say the day before? We'll have to see. You know, we'll see what they pull out of the bag. You know that Ravens whiteboard go on what is going to be the best play, but we'll have to see, right? I think we're still going to see Catalyst, we're still going to see Bangalore, we're still going to see Horizon. Question is, are we going to see any Scan Legends? Because we've seen Rat plays that kind of link a few of these POIs, so I'll be interested to see if Bloodhound does pop up once again.
And EMEA special, we'll see if North America tries to take in and put their own spin on it.
完結なんだね。なんか後ろにいるんだけど。完結ファイトなの？やば、えぐくね？終わったこれ終わった。足の引っ張り合いかな？しかもこれまたドルフィンじゃない？ドルフィンだっけ？ DIG ってんだっけ？ドルフィンゲーミングだよね。ラッコいじめ！ラッコいじめ！ミスってんじゃねえけよ。使い方なってねえな、ヒューズの！あれ外すやついねえっす。うん。DIG は DIG だっけ？あ、かんの DIG これ、あ、裏から毒刺されたっけ？あ、当たってんのか。フェーズ逃げるんじゃない？うん、逃げてるね。集落の方はされるようにしてるね。完結ファイトはやばいね。かぶせてくるやつもやばいけどね、相当。ヒューズ流行ってんだけど孫がいねえから2チームです。おー、分かってんな、君たち。COL が入れてんだけど COL キムチくんだって。キムチくん分かってんな、君。お前最強だよ。いやー、コンジットに突っ込むけど、これ。あー、倒した。すごい。さあ、倒せるときだ。お、キーマウだ、ヒューズ。うわー、キーマウヒューズはガチ強いからな。マジかよ。キーマウヒューズ。おいおいおい、どうしたんだ、これ。あー、くそ。スイッチヒアーズ。です。あ、どうした？スキューリーもヒューズ？おいおい！やばいってこれ。めっちゃいる。どうした？時代変わった？ NA。ちょっと待って。何チームいるか。あ、違う。おい、ちょ、見るね。1、2、3、4、5、5ヒューズ ?5 ヒューズやばいな、俺。孫だって全然、孫2ぐらいしかいない。やばヒューズ 5 ヒューズもいんの ?NA。やばしかしこれ 孫がいねえから使えるけどね。A パックロス半分ぐらい損いるからね。ヒューズ対策してんじゃないみんなガチで。おい。いや、そう、片目差対策できんだよ、ヒューズは。でも、ストコはマジでいねえんだよな。やっぱみんな、車線切りで入れてないのかな、ヒューズは。まあ、移動大変だしな。ADS かぶせありですよ。かぶせなしとこんの逆に。 ストリーマー大会とは違うんだ。ガチなんだよ、ガチ。PLP、さあ、アンチやってるね、そこそこ。あ、入りそう、このグレー。おー。やばい、飛んできた。やばいです。フォニーやばいね。フォニーってまだなんだっけ、76クラシックだっけ。謎の感動。
Some long range pressure with PLP, Arcology, and Oblivion taking the trailer to the other side of them. Native as well, holding the trailer opposite. So very congested in this camp.
Yeah, looks everyone wants to
be TSM! TSM!
We mentioned how they decided not to and continue on their path. TSM are already
この構成が正解か。これか。TSM ちょっとコンジトとか使ってたけどね。まああれは多分ミートラバーと当たるときに使ってたのか。初老ファイターのときは使ってるっぽいね。コンジト。出るときはこっちか。これが本命ですね、TSM の。
Towards Climatizer and maybe taking the height of Epicenter to try and fight their way in. They know this is a tough zone for them to get into, right, from Siphon, so they're going to have some decisions to make.
また崩れの気はブラハ採用か。あ、ワールドやっぱみんな移動できるからちょっと抜いてるね。コントロールキャラ入れてないからまあこれで頑張るのか。レップス、まあでキーマンしか結構なんかいろんなキャラ使えるよね。あ、そもそも TSM っていうかレプスは歴長いからな。いろんなキャラ使えるよね。お、ランページ使ってる。おー！ちょーない！Monsoon?
Down this train tunnel at the moment. Interesting to see that there was a bloodhound in the lobby, and it is going to be Dark Zero that we saw. They're going to be able to hit the survey beacon, which is going to give them not just information on where the zone is going to be going because of the fact they can see where all the traffic is piled up, but maybe if there's any isolated fights that they can take on the outside of the zone using that bloodhound to be the fragger, to do that entry damage on with Jim Burton, of course, playing that legend. So interesting decision to run the bloodhound here. Obviously counteracts that Bangalore like we mentioned a little bit earlier as well, but LG, they're looted.
スーパー上だ。ダークテラ結構いいとこ取ってんね。まあ COL がちょっと押してくるからそれがちょっと怖いかなぐらい。
I mean, the truth is, in World's Edge, you can get caught out, like in any map. You know, whether it's even Broken Moon, Olympus, those aren't competitive maps that we tend to see. Everyone knows.
まあでもワンチャン入ってるからな。漏れそうだね。TSM のムーブがちょっとこの後。第3読んでから移動か。第3読み結構強いな、ワルッチ。どっちにブレるかなんだから、そうなんだよ。こうなるんだよね。こうなるから第3値結構今強いよね。で、第3で正直入っちゃえばもう割とどこでもいいからな。建物ね、エレベートまたアンチャイというからこれ強いね。また稼げるな。バスこれやばくね、攻められそう。ヒューズとか狙われたら終わりそう。で、超キャンは外れたからこれ地獄だね、もう。ほぼ終わり。うわ、ランパー出る！ランパーとはヒューズの的だぞ！いいのか！それは終わってるな！ランパーとはダメだろ。5ヒューズの前でランパーとはもうカモっすね。ローバーどうなんだろうね。まあでもローバー入れてパッチ大体武士弱いからな。ランドマーク弱いから。グレ回収強いけどね。でも変な構成使ってんな、マジ。変な構成使ってんだよ。
towards where, surprise, surprise, Elevate Gaming find themselves.
洞窟、いや、強い洞窟は。
Survey camp at the moment are going to find themselves having to leave, having to move. One team who is going to be safe in zone, who's kind of playing the exit.
洞窟は強いけどね、かなり。
Is going to be Dark Zero as well.
あ、でもナッコーだ、やばい。
They're going to be safe as well. TSM though, they're the ones with the hardest rotate here of our big hitters so far in this lobby. They have to move all the way from epicenter through the traffic, down from the height, down
ナッコーいじ
to
め
the train station.
やばい TSM 兄弟絡めてる。誰だいて誰兄弟どの兄弟見せてくんねえかなマップ。
of TSM, sometimes a very dangerous spot to play, but they do have a gravity lift that can get them up
スクリームがこれ
buy them a bit of respite.
全部待って。おーいいね。圧かけんね。
In fact, this moment right here, there's a ton of planning because this next
金ヘルブラハなの
it's going to close so much due to the fact that
本日の金ヘルもかなり強いけどね、ちなみに。
this map. So every southern team is
ブ
going
ラ
to
ハ
have
な
to
んだね。
push in behind them. TSM have made
あ、そんなに戦闘がないから今のところ。あ、サイフズの金ヘルか。あ、やばいな、これ。じゃあゼロ持ってるのかな、金ヘル。エレベーター絡まれてんだ、これ。やば。絡み行ったのか、これ、逆に。絡みってやられてたのか、俺。下入ったから。まあ、絡み行ったっぽいね、これね。LG 下入ってきて、これ、まあちょっと攻めてやろうっていう感じで。食らいすぎたな。まあエレベーター多分その、ウルドがあったから一発いったんじゃないかな。あ、そうだね。やっぱホライゾンいるから。やっぱホライゾンいるときは投げたいよね、一回。やれたらいいし。で、片ミスで固めてるから、まあ攻められることは少ないね。
You're just kind of waiting for damage to be done because you don't have a way to create space around you.
Unless you have pressure on the
さあ、オ
outside.
プティック辛そうだね。
Happening here with some of the rotations.
一旦ウルト投げる。いや、スモークの中ウルト強いよな。ちゃんと楽しく。いいね。さあ、これがきついので、一旦壁焚いて、耐久。
In trouble. They are not in the driver's seat. You could say that at least in this position, and that's one thing that is extremely important to know. Dino Gaming, 2 points only.
Dino Gaming は Dino Dino
Impressive pros in their career so far. Together, not putting it on the board the way that they would like. Could this game be a change? This very contested choke mark, and Optic Gaming, another team who
ズープ張り付いてる。
rotations haven't really shown up today. They need to get through it as well.
They do have a great position though, Optic Gaming. They're trying to hold DNO out now, right? Well, they've managed to force them to retreat.
ブラッドライン。いや、ブラッドラッス時代は。いいね、ライフルメタ、割と。リピーターがそのうちなんか弱体化されそう。ちなみに。リピーターのシューズ高いからな。で、DBS 別に高くないからな、リピーターそんなに。まあ、2打目ぐらい下がるかもしれない。2打目、3打目。シモン51123、サブスク2ヶ月目最高お、おざっすいだんやインフレ。うわ、また右モードだ。やばアンチ。ダース熱くねこれ、後ろ切れたら。オキシジンもね、入ってんだけどね、橋下で結構積むんだよな。橋下車線切るとこ少なすぎてね、結構難しいんだよね。押されたら挟まれて終わるしな。結構辛いよね。まあでも、ここの、ここら辺も結構切れるんだけど。ここは割と強い。まあ、橋下とここら辺みたいな感じかな。今、長官切ってるけども。まあ、オキシジン長官切り切った方がいいね、確実に。後ろなくなるから。やべえ、クレーバーランパットなんだけど。やべえクレーバーランパットやばいな。クレーバーランパットでもこれ青ヘル、あ、青はワンパンじゃないよね。どうだったかな。さあ、これ一旦端っこ。ナコ飛んできたら辛いよ、ランパートは。でもそれでも採用すんだな、ランパート。白アマが飛んでる。さあ、ネイティブ、やっぱ長官組はやばいっすね。長官組はマジ住んでるからな。ネイティブ残ってるけど、これオキシジンがいるからね、切られるよね、絶対に。 まあこれでキルパ取って生き残ったとしてもなんだよな。あ、オキシジンちゃんと取っていくね。あ、来てる来てる。来てるよ。ちゃんと後ろ切り切る。さあ、ホライズンアルトも入れて、これはきついね。さあ、オキシジン、これ後ろ来たのでかいね。これで橋下また戻ってアンチ入るぞ。オキシジンいいっすね。さあ、TSM、これは、おっと、スナイプダウン目指して、さあ、レップス落ちるかレップスね、春が落ちるな、これ。ナッコ足止め。はい、ナッコ足止め。ランパートン叩いる。さあ、ランパートバリケード破壊。ランパートいじめ。蘇生できんのこれ。エグ。アークスター足止め。さあ、オキシジン来そう、後ろ。ただ、春、回復してる。強。テレミット足止め。テレミット足止め。オーマイゴー。いや、きつい。テースもきつい。アンチ入ってるけどきつい。押されるな、これ。別パワー打ってくれてる。オキシジンが打ってくれてる。これレップス一旦耐久したいね。スナイパーもしてる。バースティー。これはどこだ？ローバーの舞台かな。ローバーの舞台だね。ナッコ打ってる。ナッコーランパートいじめ。お、すごい、なんか一調整してる。すごい。
They're calling him over here, and I'm wondering if Reps is thinking, hey, I could ult this. I could ult this and really cause some problems because he knows both players are going to be pretty.
ランパートポジどうなんだろうね。ランパートだから守れると思ってる感じだと思うけどね、正直。壁あるし。きついけどね、普通に。挟まれて。これ、漁夫いかないんだね、でも。フェーズ一人減ってたからさ、漁夫行って倒しきった方が一応後ろなくなるから安全っちゃ安全だけどね。やっぱ変な構成してるチームってね、あんまりやっぱ戦闘が強くないんだよな。メタ構成使っても勝てないから変な構成したりするからね。うわ、弓拾った。弓強いわ。ランパート弓か。さあ、オプティックは線路ちょっと怖いか。登りたいか。うおさあ、TSM 死んだ。ダークゼロ多分飛んでるまでキープしてるはず。これダークゼロ逆転あるな。あ、でも4キロ持ってるな、バースティー。やば。ここで稼ぎすぎだろ。でもあそこを守れてるの大会だし、みんな、かばう余裕がないのかもしれない。キワとか、舞台数残りすぎてて。ローバー済みだね。唯一。ノックドはなんか変なとこいるな。ドロップ一旦スモーク。肩壁ない。穴拾わないか。モバイル去ったから拾って復活あるけどね。あ、でもリスポーンあるか、目の前に。あれ使うか。さあ、LG。一旦漁る。たまない。たまない、たまない、ガチたまない。さあ、ダークゼロは、これは、後出し。トンネル取り切ってるのか。塩でどこ行ったんだろう。死んだかな。いやーさあ、地獄なう。バースティー残ってるまだ。さあ、エレベーター突っ込み。エレベーターやべえ。エレベーター強え。3人残ってるしっかり。やば。さあ、しかもワンチャン入ってる。うわ、強。さあ、エレベーターダークゼロ残ってる。後日さあ、3チームまでいったいきなり。 7部隊ぐらい減った、いきり。やば。ダークゼロ、フィーズ、エレベーター。これじゃ TSM 抜かれるかな、ダークゼロでおそらく。しかもダークゼロ、ポジ広。これはダークゼロ、今のところは有利だから、肩壁がないからね。状況変えられちゃうからね、肩壁で、ちなみに。そこでどうなるからね。うわ、エレベーター取った。これ押すわ。うん。これ押し切った方がいいね。まあ、とりあえず、これ2位になってもさ、3キルと順位ポイント2入るし、ハイヤ倒すのガチヤバ。じゃこれで状況、てか、ワンワン強いね、ブラハ。肩壁使わせなかったらもう有利だからな。グレかった、全部あって。やべ。いや、落とされた。しかし、この2人乗ってるよ。順番で採掘はやばいんじゃないか。うわ落ちてる落ちてた相手の人の落ちてる回線切れてたかわいそうこのタイミングでおっと、ドンマイ玄米これドンマイ玄米これはかわいそうっすね。いやー、勝つやつめちゃくちゃあったねこれは運が悪いとしかちょっと言いようがないですね。神ゲー。まあ何があったか分かんないけども。いやー、これはかわいそうだな、なかなか。あ、そういう時はあるよな。しかしダークゼロガチ強いな。トンネル取り来てなんか大パン激内だよね、マジで。普通に負けるより激内だよな、これ正直ダンスに見終わったドンマイだな。何落ち、うわー、24個で殺すか。 TSM はこれ抜かれたね。There was a couple of long range shots that came in from Dark Zero that got that first knock and then it bunched up and grenade damage was enough. But FaZe, I mean, I will say they're going to be extremely. どのタイミングしたんだろうね。まああそこに入ってからだね。This roster and thought, hey, this isn't one that jumps out to me on paper, but I think that there's still a lot to be said for the three players on FaZe here. I think they're going to be a little bit of a dark horse going through this season, and I'm a believer. I have to say, if they can either win that contest over at Geyser or decide to get enough loot and can consistently get enough loot and leave, I think they've got it in them to put some good points on the board consistently.
I mean, it's not like Zeratricky and Panders aren't proven. Snipedown, we know, leadership-wise, absolutely proven. Winning-wise, absolutely proven for multiple games, and especially here in the ALGS, just hasn't picked up that flow recently. But this could be it. Elevate Gaming too, you're right, I was surprised, but when you look at the way that most teams are used to fighting within smoke right now, it's rare that all three teams have that level of the ability to fight you so clearly without digi threats on. レベル強いね。あの家から脱出してちゃんと残ったね。This means that we have got to take the pace to a different level. We're not going to be able to hide at all. We have to treat this as if it's go time 100%. Optic, decent game. 8 Gang had a really strong showing, and I'm liking the Rampart. And as we look, ダサいなとかいう神がいる。Of our showcase in game number 4, still teams that can easily keep performing. Oblivion maybe comes to mind. They've been very consistent over 3. Their first stud so far on World's Edge. I'm sure
TSM 2ポイント。あ、シオル結構早めに死んでたね。
A 0 this time around, and obviously complexity. They were in the mix, a top 2 finish in game 1, 13th here, but still 4 kills, showing Mark that they're willing to fight and they're feeling pretty good in terms of their at least contests.
Yeah, the contest looked pretty comfortable for complexity, to be honest with you, but apart from that, not really too much to talk about. They forced their way into the top 10, but I think that was just from the long-term position that they did have. It was the next fight where they really didn't contribute enough to force their way towards that end game. TSM had a little bit of a rough game there, a very tough rotate for them. Decided to go from the side of Epi, which was a little bit of a surprise, but also you can understand it coming down from that height. Maybe they thought it was going to pull back towards where those rocks were a little bit more, but I mean, TSM, they're not going to win every game of Apex Legends. It's a fact. You know, you do still have bad games, even though they won 2 back-to-back.
I mean, I just want to bring up again TSM, Dark Zero. We've seen that back and forth last year. We see it today. It's just so much fun to watch on North America when you have 2 great fighters going at, and it really reminds me of a little bit of Messi and Ronaldo. You know, for our football fans out there, just 2 greats. People, obviously different types of accolades at different times, but you can tell the talent is there. to be able to win it all at any given moment. Talk to me just a little bit about, you know, not only just Jin Burton and Zero picking themselves back up after a disappointing finish in champs, not what they wanted, but also how well Sykes is meshing into the squad.
Well, first of all, I just need to say that between Messi and Ronaldo is completely incomparable, and Messi is a far superior football player. But anyway, Dark Zero, let's take a look at what they did in that game, because I think, you know, you're talking about synergy, you're talking about teams coming together, and I love the way that Sykes is playing on this team, by the way. I think that Sykes plays best as almost a secondary slayer, and I think he steps in perfectly, right? He can capitalize on damage that Jim Burton does. Jim Burton goes in, and a lot of the time he will be an instigator in fights alongside Zero, who can get a little bit of damage down, and then with the movement he has on MNK can usually get out of there, which leaves Sykes in a perfect, almost natural feeling. Clean up the damage, use that R9, that car, whatever it is that he's so proficient with in those close range fights, and it's almost as if he can take fights without pressure a lot of the time, because a lot of the work would have been done by his two teammates. And I think that final fight was a really good indication of what Sykes can expect to do on this team, and I think it makes Dark Zero a very good looking unit. But you never know with Dark Zero, you know, the next event they might not win it, and then they just make it.
すげえ。15ポイント差。やば。
I wonder too, I mean, one of the thoughts I had, and this is something that we can talk and bring up, and as these weeks go by, there's an age component as well. Maybe just the way Zero and Jin Burton are linked together in the ALGS coming in.
最高。あざっすいぜ。頑張ーいぜ。
A little older, maybe something more alignment in terms of the way that this is fitting right now, in terms of the goals without needing to
12試合にする日あるよ。来週からそうだね。
different decisions. How do you practice? How do you think about the game? Maybe this is just something that meshes on a lot of different levels for Dark Zero, but we will find out very soon. TSM don't win. They don't go back to back to back. It's Dark Zero's turn to claim the limelight. When we come back, 2 more games to close out day 1. We'll see you in a sec.
ここかわいそうマジで。落ちやがった。あとうまいっすね。涙目。バンガスナイパーフェーズだよ。あといないね。2チームか3チームだったよ。構成は構成見るかさっきの。2、3、4、5、6、7、8、9、10。コンジと10もいる。ワールドチェやば。カタルシストがカタルシスト13。ワンガが確定か。バンガ16、バンガ16、すごい。これでも結構いるね。1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、9、まあ結構いるね。兄弟5いるよ。兄弟5いる。結構すごい。
dropship, and World's Edge is looking as beautiful as it ever has. Who's going to take this one away though? That's the real
バリスティックはね、弱いっすね、競技だと。何もできない。耐久できない、移動できない。終わり。負けです。あ、フェーズはもう戦わないんだね。ただ絡んできてるな、相手が。もうどれだけプッシュパクっていけるかみたいな感じになってるな。6人、5だった ?5 だったっけですけど、6だったさあ、ここもファイト、超過ファイト。ナッコいじめやばい。初動ナッコやばい。初動ナッコやばい。いや、相手も兄弟？これ兄弟対決？兄弟対決だ！ナッコ刺そう！ナッコ刺すやばい。さあ、チネルチャージ。当たんない。いやー、もうずい。死にたくない、死にたくない。あー、こっちでセンチじゃ当たんない。うわー緊急でしょ。さあ、相打ちやったけど、ぶっ殺した。いやー。ちねった。キルリーダー0、15、強。パッドズより上だわ。ザップはちょっとわかんないな。攻撃レースはね、弱いっすね。ポータル中に狙われる。正直やっぱ攻撃もできない、守りもできないキャラはもう弱いね、今。アビリティがみんな強いもん、今。Secret Formula just trying to hunker down a little bit. Watson fences go down for protection. They've also got catalyst to barricade those doors. 本日10だからな。This is one of the most difficult fights to take sometimes when you're stuck in this building. So many doorways to try and defend, and the team that's attacking can pick and choose just how they want to. さあ、オキシジンはどこが通すそうだね。さあ、抜けるんか。
Looks like Oxygen, we're going to decide to leave this fight for now, and I think it's smart. You can see there was Watson fences down, there's potential of a gen coming up pretty soon, and it also slows down the rotation.
ニューキャッスルも弱いんじゃないかな、今は。いや、LA は多分ヒューズいるから無理だよ、多分。そういう壁キャラは。あと、金ノック拾えないとね、2月あんま強くないからな、俺的には。ナッコ足止めやべえ、アークはやばい。あ、マルグラッシュめ。マジで言った。一旦壁耐久。さあ、相手はソンド。バルキリか。バルソン漫画。オブリビオン。はいはいはいはいはいはい。さあ、天敵いるね。天敵いるな。天敵いる。ナッコ足止め。ちょっと攻めそうだね、これ。ザイにもインペルハル抜いた。やば。ファイヤー足止めこれよこれよやばい TS2 連続もしかしてこけるか大丈夫かやべえいやー終わったー無理だよこんなのやばいガチでやばいガチでやばいやべえザイに見てる見てる助けてさああと8発おー
Imagine if he hits that with the bullet drop, that would have been quite some shot. Zainu now decides he's going to turn his
さあアンチ腐ってる ワッツソン今回印象可愛いから買って使ってたけど難しくて使わなくなったわ。ワッツソンそもそも強くないんだよな、ランクとかだと。単純だし、いやそう弱いから使えないですね。使えないが正しいね。難しいうんぬんじゃなくて。使えない。ランクやカジュアルだと。そういうことです。
As everyone's going to have to head to Monument, there is still places to play here, or space to
おっ
play.
と抜くのか
A lot of room on the southwest side, and even though it's not going to be a guaranteed position for you in the late game, it is
クレバーも使い切りそうだね。
rotating late from the southern side, so it's not going to be all doom and gloom.
クレバーね、競技者だとね、終盤まで強いからな。ヘルメット白とか。アーマーも育ってない人いるしな。結構クレバー俺残したい派なんだよね。まあ武器があるんだったらいける。なんかああいう時ってさ、セミスナずっと持っといて撃つんだよね。で終盤クレバー俺持つんだよな、残しといてっていうの結構いいね。さあコンジトルだっつね、今のドゥープドゥープドゥープさんハイドか。でここのハイド熱くね。熱い熱い熱い。ああ、起こせないっすね。車線通ってるな。やべえ。
And it's just about survival here. Still 19 squads remain, so you know that every angle you take, any position you try and move in, there's probably going to be someone who can see you.
あとカジュアルね。難しいよね。そう、フェンス当てないと面白くないからな。ただフェンス当てても何もないからな。当たらずにないし、見えてるから。ガスじゃ楽しいね、カジュアルは。リアルに。ガスは見えないから当たってくれるし、結構。
We get it. You love Final Fantasy.
You can tell I was excited by the crossover, everybody, can't you? Yes, okay, I was alive when the original came out. What are you going to say about it? FaZe, they're back over towards Geyser. Made a little bit of a change and maybe just going for a little bit of a, shall we say, the comfort of home where they did land and trying to rotate how they would want to had they not been contested.
I actually really like this FaZe roster, and the more that I see them play, the more that I think they can be a real threat coming into this season. I've always had a lot of respect for Snipedown and his ability, but we've got to talk about Pandas and Zera and what they've been able to do previously on other teams and what they add actually to this roster. I think that as a unit, these guys, they
フェーズ今3位なんだね。高いな。ここもパッド3かな、多分。デラトビキキーマーだっけ？
Yeah, I think that's the important word to use though, right? Grow. I think one thing that people were looking at on this roster is like, who is the leader? Who is going to be taking the reins?
パッドだったら気すんだけどな。
Zeratricky has done the majority of that. You could say
デラトビキキーマーか。
yelling has been Pandas, and Snipedown's been put into a position of comfort, which is pick up the kills. You know, do what you do best and make sure you hit those nice Snipedown like.
そう、オキシジンこれトンネルファイト。スナイプボイスの成績いい。とことこスナイプ君。最年長。俺と年一緒だからな。32。これとしてる。あ、リーズ行かない？釣られたチャンス！これとしたいね。だとした。あれ、相手なんか孤立してたね。なんかすごい。あ、これ固まってる。階段の頭1個。しかもこれ突っ込まれるか大丈夫か？突っ込まれそうなので一旦引く。さあ、うまいね。やっぱオキシジンだな。
And once again, Dan, we have a slow burner of a game where we are seeing everybody realize, even in week one, how important every single game is to make sure that when the standings are done at the end of the season,
あいや、見づらいからな。大会の時は買えそう。
Yeah, I mean, there was a period of time during ALGS where you would just get points for where you finished in the overall standings, but now it's about your accumulated points of where you've placed, of where you've got kills that go into the overall standings as well. So it's not about trying to play catch up.
TSM まだ残ってる。廃炉してんのか。
Instead, it's about trying to put as much points on.
現在死んでるのが2パかな。
And that's why we still will see teams playing it slow, playing their game, not doing anything crazy.
プロシーンは硬い人変ないよ。強いもん。いや、硬い人強いからね、ちなみに。別に。弱体入ってもさ、いや俺ランクでも全然使えると思うけどね。別にアビリティはそんな弱体化じゃないけどな、個人的に。足遅くなるし邪魔になるし、ダメージなんか割とおまけに近い俺なんかでは。建物固められるしね、ウルト強いしな。スーパー強いけどね。 ランクやカジュアル弱い嘘だからな、カタリスト。ちなみに。使えてないだけで。うわー、スーパーショいった。これやばいね。こうなんだね。フラットワンチャンいってる。TSM もまあ入ってるけども、ハイドバレたら死ぬね。ダークゼロもまた入ってると。これやばいな。ノリ。壁強えよ。使えてないだけだよ、カタリスト。本当に。使えてないし、使い方が多分分かんないからみんな使ってないんだよ。単純に使用率低いのは弱いからじゃないからね。使えないからだからね。難しくて簡単じゃないから。頭いいやつやとやっぱ使えないですね、こういう変なキャラは。本日なんか簡単じゃん。ボタンポチで回復できるし。簡単なんだよ。ブラハも簡単。ホライゾンも簡単。リココンできれば。簡単ね。まあ俺もずっと言ってないけど、やっぱ簡単で強いキャラが流行る感じなし。さあフィーズ、オーマイガーオーマイガーオーマイガーオプティックこれ待ってたのか、ハイドしたの。オーマイガーフェーズまさかやられてしまった。ちょっとミスってしまった。どんまい玄米。これダークゼロは下こもってんだけど、あれここのパーティーどこ行った。最初にいたワッツソンパーティー死んだのか。 TSM え COL 死んだ。 TSM キル取った。TSM あとね使う人あんまないんじゃないかな正直。なんだっけランドバッククソいいからね、物資には困んないね。まずあとホライゾン採用してるし、ウルトとか受けられるからな。さあじゃあクレバート1位。ここはオンゾーン。うわーオブリビオンか、さっきしかいたの。あったまねえじゃん。あ、これあった。さあ下になった。あ、こっからのこの人たちの移動っすね。さあ COL 全滅。 TSM まだ残ってんじゃないか。ダークゼロが圧かけていく。やばい。しかし別から撃たれるとちょっと厳しい。さあフラットアンチャいってる。さあ次入ってない。ああこれはもうショメいった。肩壁なんだよな。さあホライゾン足止め。ナッコ足止め。うわーおやばい、家の中入ったやつなんでこいつやば。神いる。えベンチ入った。やべえすげえ。さあバッテリー巻いていく。フィニッシャーバッテリーおいしい。あいつやべえいいとこ入ったね今。コトンって食うだけでね足音。すごい逃げ方したな今。さあアペギャングなんかこいつは結構残るね。キルポ取ってるし、もしかして強い。激アツチーム TSM やばい。TSM さすがにもう苦しそう。俺移動してる PLP。 ただアンチ入ってる。入ってないな。ザイニューとこワンチャン入ってるか。あ入ってそうだね。ザイニュー入ってるわ。ギリ入ってるなこれ。 TSM さあさすがに苦しい。さあ TSM またしてもあんまり稼げずダークゼロでまた離されそう。アーペギャング死んだセノックスにやられた。 D の E のだっけ。さあ PLP いいねここ。まあ弾がないのちょっとクソだねこれ。さあちょっと覗きか。中なんか仕掛けそうだな若干。肩壁ないな。でもいけないなあんまり。さあオプティックはちょっとどうだ。まあそこ入ってるからドロップのところいいね。ドロップのところ熱いな。これかなり熱くねえかオプティック今回。ポジクソいぞ。これ大チャンスだね。でも金スコピルピこれ中入った。中じゃない外か。外回り外打っちゃってるからこれ漁夫いってんのか。あ違うか。アサリいただくかな今の。アサリいただくか。さあ中打っちゃってるぞ。これいくんじゃない PLP。さあ LG スイート落ちて、スイートどこだ。やばいスレア死ぬ。オーマイゴー。うわあれエレベーターなんか20位だってるからいじめられてね。おっとなんかバグってるよこれ。順位バグ発生してる。あエレベーターじゃないか。あいいのか。はいエレベーターが一番下今。あれ違うよな。
Dark Veils have started to go down just to give a little bit of extra coverage to those teams who have to make
it.
But
スキューリーしか上取れるのこれ。いただきに立ってんじゃないこれ。ダークゼロ。いやしかしこれあーちょっと待った。これダークゼロキルポチャンス。キルかき入れられた。やばすぎる。いやしかしこれダークゼロ上が撃たれてもうきついねこれ。ネイティブナチュラルガンチャーだっけ。サイクズマジただスモークでいました。来た。耐えたんだからあそこガチやばすぎだなこいつら。あマジやばい。コンチ取ると一旦足止め。ラッコ足止め。あそこ耐えるのやば。さすがにしかしゼロ死んだ。キル取ったセノックス。やばい。うわーまあ言うてですよこれ。いやオプティック最強だなこれ。絶対勝ったろこれ。でまずソンがいないじゃん。空爆投げて肩壁焚いてこれのでもう絶対終わるじゃんこんな。しかもアンチ近いしこれ。ゴッドボゴッドだろこれ。もう打ち合った方向振って肩壁焚いてこいつして待て終わりじゃねこれ。リアルに。さあこれで終わり。さあ右ワンバンだったね。右仕留めた。強い。ナッコーサッソー。おーこれ右突っ込むかな。肩壁あるからいけんじゃないこれ。いかないのかな。でもいかないか。角入んないときついんじゃないかこれ。どうなんだ。カゴいった。これオプティック有利だね。次肩壁使ってまた耐久できるからな。ただ一旦耐久。違う目の前これ壁入ってるね。もう勝ち確だねこれ。オプティックさすがに負け。もうどうやっても負けないわ。さあ3部隊かもう。これもう打ち合ってくれるの待ってたっけか。もう打ち合ってくれるの待ってたねこれもう絶対負け。もう確定です。勝ち確ですこれも。いや言うて勝ち確ではないか。まだある。まだ意外と肩壁があえて残ってるぞ。でも多分これ肩壁2個使ってくれるんじゃない相手。上のやつも使うでしょ。
I might just is where's the other team? Okay, they're on the height.
They're fighting, they're fighting.
なっこはしょめ
They're there.
Channel 150 dead.
On our right, on our close right, careful.
Yeah,
Drop
careful.
on our left.
あれオプティック意外とあー絡まれた
On you guys.
やっぱ肩壁なんだよな
We got second.
Okay. Nice.
いやー勝ち確と思ったんだが肩壁でやっぱ戦局変わってしまうなるほどね思ったら入ってたなそもそも左がそもそも思ったら入ってたね先に当たると思いきや全然当たらなかった
Giving Flat a little bit more freedom as they utilize that Dark Veil to push over onto the right-hand side. And it was what Optic were worried about. They said, don't let this team push on the right side, but you can't counter a Dark Veil sometimes without a horizon maybe to get above it, especially when another team can potentially drop on you. So unfortunate for Optic, but they still secured a second place finish with KP, far better than their performances on Storm Point earlier today.
Yeah, should push them at least up towards the top half of the leaderboards, which is a big difference, right? We talk about some of the weeks that you look back on if you don't qualify for lands, and there's usually one outlier. If you're pretty consistent and you at least put points on the board week to week, then you feel confident you're going to have one a good week at least. And a team like Optic Gaming with the talent they have, you expect that to be coming. And there's still another game to go. Remember, for Optic, it could be a completely different end of the day as it was after 3 games.
リアライズなんかポジション取りがあんまりうまくないんだよねなんかしないけど腹コントロールぶん投げてんのかなどうだろう
Yeah, good decision making, and you say all the time hitting their shots as well in those final moments. We can see teams get those positions.
あ硬いするとね後出しが強いね
Have to follow through with the damage.
出すしかなかったねでも
Exactly that. Yes, help from the other team, and Albrelelli dropping in where he did, but you still have to convert those games and
出すしかなかったのかなどうだろう
presented to you.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive stuff. This is how things look after that game. Of course, Flat on top. And you can see 12 placement points.
ダークゼロ12ポイントか強いな
Total for them, so very, very strong game. And we mentioned how Optic felt like they had a strong one as well. They had AKP to go along that side, that second place. 17 overall for them. Dark Zero a little bit further down with placements, but 9 kills down. 12 points for them again. They will be extending their lead to the top.
Yeah, really just putting down and laying down the points at the moment. 12 is a huge game considering they finished in 6th place, and that's thanks to Sykes at times just being able to be a one-man army in certain scenarios, getting them extra couple of placement points on the board. So very important for him and for the squad. As we look down at the bottom 10, I'm sure there were still teams who were able to pick up kills here or there. Yep, just a few threes, a few team fights won between certain squads. And then again, early fights not going the way of other teams.
I did want to mention as well, by the way, Sykes somehow got Dark Zero out of that position. And I don't know if they were alive along. They were actually, because he got the kill onto the final member of DNO, which gives him an extra placement point as well. So just little things like that. A lot of eyes on him, understandably, joining that Dark Zero roster. It's a big move to make, right? It's, you know, Exet are a team who have had success in North America. We know how good they've been. Have they been able to turn up on
さあ次ラストまあダークゼロ1位濃厚っすね
Historically, they haven't, but Dark Zero have won championships. You can kind of maybe understand why that move was enticing for him. But again, he would be aware of what's happened previously on that Dark Zero roster, right? He would be aware of some of the roundabout of players that have been there. But I got to give a huge amount of respect to him for making that move,
配信してんのかな
and backing himself and showing as well in the first week here that he can be
ああやってるね
consistent missing piece.
ダークゼロ配信してるわ ゼロが配信してる
felt themselves might have been missing.
Yeah, and it's, you know, even though it's a tough decision and it's a risky decision, it's a smart one as well. You're joining you're joining the only other team that has ever won.
スクリーム配信も2日目の残ってんだけど
Putting yourself within the opportunity to be the best, and you're trusting that Dark Zero can find that same kind of firepower that they had in previous seasons.
Well, one team who, of course, we've got to talk about is going to be Flat, the winners of our previous game, even though we had a big points total coming in from Dark Zero. These two teams that we see on our screen were very much involved in that final fight. First place and second place, 12 placement points and 9 respectively, as you would imagine. And not much between them, Dan. You're looking at damage stats, you're looking at assists, maybe a few more for Optic, but that's about as close as it gets.
Yeah, quite a similar story, really, and the only thing that teetered Flat over Optic was the fact they were able to win that last fight and get that extra little bit of damage. And just a comparison of Nano and Skittlecakes as well. A very different story, but Skittlecakes for me is always one of these players that you can rely on to put the damage. But Nano with 2k damage, really stepping up for Flat on the Bangalore and making sure that they are making themselves as big as possible, outputting damage like that.
I've got to say, I do like the logo, but as we all know, the Earth is a cube.
おおすごい25ポイント圧倒してんな
Dark Zero up on top, 82 points, and they are establishing a lead, Dan. Now, well, get excited, everyone.
Don't you say it.
There might... I'm not going to say it until the end of the show, all right? I'm just saying potential bonus points. They win the next game.
TSM にしか2位でもだいぶ上だけどね、正直。
Potential? Potential?
You know, TSM would have to fall early again, which it has happened. World's Edge hasn't really gone the way that it did for Storm Point for them. But most importantly, Dark Zero have 82 points, Mark. They are putting on such a clinic at the moment, such a huge points haul, which is going to do them wonders. Even early days.
3試合チャンプボーナスでプラス1ポイントもらえるのかな、どうなんだろう。ボーナスポイントの俺仕様知らねえんだよな。50ポイント差でプラス1みたいなの書いてあったの知ってるけど。
How it's going to work until we get into these lobbies, and I think if you have early success here, like Dark Zero, they would expect to have as well. I think it just means that they believe that this was the right move, right? And they're going to feel very, very confident going into the weeks ahead. Speaking of what's coming up, we've got one more game to get done, and we're going to go for a quick break before we get there. We've got one more game on World's Edge. When we get back, we're going to bring it to your eyes.
ちょっとボーナスポイントわかんねえな。わからん。まあいいや。過去の人は、そう、フィジカル負けしてんのかな、どうなんだろう。
Welcome back, everybody. I tell you what, it's been a great day, Dan. It's been so good to have the ALGS back. I've had a smile on my face for the
ALGS 見るとやっぱめっちゃエピやりたくなる。そう。よろしくね。
Seeing all the team changes and how they're working out, but we still got some unresolved business ahead of us.
PC 版でランクやると終わるからな。チーターなどって涙目になる。あって。あ、やっぱこういうゲームだよなって。やる気失せる。リアルに。ESL20 キルチャンピオンかな。まあそのレベル。25ポイント差だからな。さあここはまたあさってる。やばいなこのチームマジで。
Looks like they're going to go for the same kind of path. They'll take the center zone, and on the flip side, it's going to be looting over towards Vault. So it may not even be a contest really at this point. It's both teams splitting the POI.
フェーズさっきのミス7位まで落ちてる。やば。3位だったのに。
I mean, it has been a contest, but I think both teams have realized that there's not really any point. We get enough loot, which is somewhat surprising, seeing as guys are
さあ LG。これ溶岩当たってんだね。3個ランダムかぶってんのか俺。溶岩調査完結。そして LG アーマー強いな。や死ぬ。リピーター強えー。ナコいじめ。
Still though, a good amount of points. 5th place, 31. They've done pretty well, especially considering Dark Zero have been mopping up the majority of points here. And when these lobbies happen, you have to make the most of it. You have to find points where they're available.
スイートの味方無名じゃないんじゃないですか。 スレイヤーなんか知ってるんじゃない？結構強い人は。もう一人読み方知らねえ。名前は知ってるけど、なんていうのかわかんねえ。見たことあるけど。TSM ワンチャンいった。これは TSM 逆転アンチ来た。逆転アンチ来ました。TSM はこういうことなんですよ。やるんですよ TSM は。神は見捨てない。おお、取りきた。さあ逆転アンチ。さあ翻訳チャンネル盛り上がるか。これ銃声出して弾いたね今。ここいるよみたいな。分かったやつ突撃してくるからな。さあ一人なんでかなり強気に覗いてんねこれ。カバーがいないから TSM レプスヘルピングレプス。これは春がかなり強気に覗かないとやばい。まあ肩壁もう大体いいレベルだねこれ。たまったら書くかな。下降りて待って。やべ危ねえ危ねえ。助かったレプス助かった。ランクリピーターばっか。まあ、ヘムロック消えちゃったしね。
But arguably at times he's going to be the most important player. I mean, we talk about MK, we talk about controller and the differences that they're available to you, but we know that reps plays a vital part for TSM. But you're right, it does seem like
say, we've had Messi versus Ronaldo. Let's not bring up MK versus controller.
Yeah, that's a very different conversation, which will spark outrage, I'm sure. But Elevate making their rotation through the tunnel. And it looks like they were able to get ahead of the likes of Skirt. They didn't really press onto the third party, and instead, quite intelligently so, they move in and will start to make their rotation.
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed with the decisions from EA. I think one thing that maybe Zach Major as an IGL has been a little bit guilty of sometimes in the past is not taking that extra beat to think about the decision. And it seems like this time they're just taking that extra second sometimes just to make, is this the right play? Yeah, it is. Okay, let's commit to it. Instead of I'm going, everybody follow me. You know, I think that the communication's been pretty good, and you know, watching them go through the PLQ is a good indication of how their comms are, of course, been sounded and how they have been commanded by Zach. And I've got to say, I've got a lot of good things to say about this team. I think they really are working well together. And plus, Zach's got the Buster Sword. You know, I'm a big fan immediately. Hey everyone, I played Final Fantasy. Did you know that?
Right, just as a final note on this one.
なんかエレベーターいじめられてね、マジで。さっきから20円0ポイントになってんだから。合計。配慮してる！
Thanks. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
え？アーク投げてんだから。いないわけないって感じで投げてんのか。え、みんな灰の警戒してないけどね。やべえ。灰の警戒でアーク投げんだね。やばすぎる。まあそこ空いてるわけねえって思ってんだろうな、さすがに。何かを刺したわけではなくて。すごい。ちゃんとやるんだね。すごいな。
I think one thing to point out here is the comparison of something we talked about in the previous game where we were saying, hey, FaZe have a tough rotate here. They had to go through Monument, and when we went to the
アーク投げるんだね。いやー、まあハイドが流行ってるから多分ああいうことするんだろうな。昔だったらね、カタリストのアビリティ投げて近くにいたら反応するからな。それでよかったけどね。
And that is just a tougher rotate. So many teams to have to go through for them, and I'm just interested to compare how they navigate it in comparison, because this is an opportunity for TSM to maybe close that gap, right? TSM were in second place before that previous game. Dark Zero have kind of extended that lead ever so slightly, but TSM have perfect prio to this zone.
おはようございます。もうラスト J ですね、これ。
So it's kind of a tale of two different teams this time. One's quickly rotated to what I think is going to be Godspot. One has to work their way.
シオエル警戒していってないな。シオエルもこれハイドしてんのかな。あ、撃った。ドルフィン撃ったね今。 じゃあ、のか、ドルフィンが入るかな。あ、シオルが入るしいのか。いやー、左やった。まずいです。ダークゼロあんなとこにいんだけど。あ、ダークゼロどこだ。壁じゃないのか、今。あ、アンチアンでそっち行ったのかな。わかんないけど。めっちゃ甘ついんだけど、やばすぎだろ、これ。
Gonna have to be a step-by-step process again here for Dark Zero, and they do have the little bit the cushion, so to speak, with the points that they've already put on the board to know.
金ヘル持ってる、やば。
Even if they work their way into the top 10 here with a couple of KP, it should be enough. You would imagine.
ミニファイヤー、ミニファイヤー、ミニファイヤー、ミニファイヤー。しかし空爆投げられてしまった。アルブラやばい。やばい、本当に死ぬ、本当に死ぬ、本当に死ぬ、本当に死ぬ。ダラブラカバー入らなきゃダメじゃねこれ。入ってる。うっ強っ。やばい。こいつやべえ。誰だこいつ。アウェイキングみたいなやつ。アウェイケニング FPS。誰かわかんねえけど。グラビティベル。PLP やられてる。ザイにハイドやられた。ハイドされてた。そしてゼロが切りパク。ハイドなんだよな。空いてるわけねえんだよな。やっちゃったね。かわいそう。またやんのこれ。2回目行くのこれ。ハイド。マジ ?2 発へのハイドっすかこれ。あれフラット落ちてる。やば。フラットは一人もわかんねえな。ナノって人見たことあるかなぐらいかな。もしかしたら。あ、キノコ持ってる。味しめてる。ハイドが一番簡単に切り取れるからな。ちなみに。一緒に入れてから。ハイドされてたなあ !SG ハイドです。ハイドしかいませんこのゲーム。ハイドベター。さあこれ足止め。SG ハイド。俺もやってたわ。競技新時代。マジでよかった SG。SG ハイドバカ強いからな、ちなみに。マジパイプの裏がさ、くっそいい感じに隠れられるのやばいんだよね。しかもクリアリング大変なんだよね、しかもパイプの裏って。パイプってなんかね、90度じゃなくてなんかね、120度ぐらいまでさ、クリアリングしないといけないからね、裏までしっかり見ると見えないからね。クソ強かった SG ハイドは。青パイプの裏がガチで強いんだよね。ハイド。ハイドなんだよな。いやまあ、ハイドは別にバトラーとしてはね、正しいけどね。クリアリングしねえ方が悪いからな。さあ、ダークゼロ広いね。まあ、こっからかなり移動できるし、いいね、いいポジション。しかもアーマー強いから戦闘もちょっと強気にできるし、ポイント稼げるね。さあ、しっかり弾いていく。セル21、バッテリー6。やんな、こいつ。グレ持ってね。うわ、フェーズやった。やば。LG もまあまあ入ってるし。さあ TSM が次で外れるからな。TSM が逆転できるか。さあダークゼロ仕掛けいった。さあダークゼロの形いいっすね、見た目的には。これダークゼロいいっすね。空爆で動かされてるしきついね。さあ固まってしまった。固まっちゃうともう負けなんですよね。展開してる方が有利、基本的に。さあゼロが超展開していってんね。まあさすがにダークゼロすごい今までだ。ただこれ漁夫来てるからね。なんたらエターナルがウィングが拾った。さあ EC が一人展開。しかしウィングマンの開始。このカーターって人が結構展開してる。コースくん。しかし結構もうやる気ないな、正直これ。やる気ないっすね。 やる気ないとダメージ受けたらこれ突っ込んでくるよ。大丈夫？
delivered to their back as well while they do so, and I kind of like this decision, to be honest with you. Sort of the fight wasn't really there for the taking, didn't get the initial damage or the knock on the third party, so decided let's play gatekeeper, let's play the high ground and force them towards us.
エレベートオプティック、オプティック一人だ。おっとオプティック、これはまずいのでは。3地に入ってワンチャンドロップとか引き切れれば起こせる。リフトあるからこれ浮かせて一旦回収したいね。浮かせるか。そうだね、浮かせる。このホライズンのこの浮かしが強すぎる。あー死んだ。まあでも蘇生できるぞこれ。ダークだセブル。やべゼロやばい。ジェンバってタイマーね勝っていく。リピーター最後打っていく。さあサイクルこれはもうちょこちょこのずく。さあこれカバーいって先に潰しちゃいですね。さあスキャンやばいな。さあテレビと突っ込んでいく。リピーター更新値当たりすぎじゃねえよガチで。テレビットじゃたまんないんすよ。テレビット25だからな。だってもツッコミは。さあここしっかり押さえた。さあダークゼロこれはもう1位でしょ。もうキルコもだって7持ってるからすでにもうこれダークゼロさ。エレベート1位本当に1位なのこれ。違うよね。今までゼロなわけないもんな。ドラハボいない方が面白いよ。まあスキャンキャラはいない方がいいっすね。ガチで振ったら。さあオブリビオン、あーいいね。ワトだとちょっと攻めづらいよな正直相手。あと硬いんだよな意外と。時間かかるしグレ通らないし。攻めの起点がつきづらい。うわなんかすごいとこなってんなアンチやばい。さあ TSM のムーブちょっと見たいね。どう動くんだろう。まあ下潜り込むかな。オプティックいるけどね。あ上打ち合ってからのここら辺のキープとかここら辺から狙いそうだな TSM。
What a team does when they've made a decision when the zone doesn't go your way. Where do TSM go from here? Elsewhere you saw on the southern side there's about 5 or 6 teams all in the same area, all still on the edges of Lava Siphon at the moment, who are all going to have to move in.
ダークですでに88。21ポイント離れてる。30しか。
Also in that area too. So there's going to be a lot of action in the kill feed shortly as TSM sends an evac tower to the skies and
evac tower? やべ第4いて。さあ橋下目指すか右に狙うか。まあ硬いソルトで一旦耐久するかな。あ待ってこれ上取るか。あここがおいいねすごい。片壁はそうだね。うわすげえいいとこったいいとこったけど家から覗かれたら結構やばいね。フェーズが来るかもしんない。いやー耐えるかそこ TSM。さあ硬いストで一旦耐久。やべえ移動成功した。しかもこれリフト上の乗れるぞこの後。クレームかクレーム車線もう通らないんじゃないか。どうなんだろう。まだきついか乗るの。乗られてる誰か乗られてる上。あ別派来た、逆に上のやつが弾いてくれる。しかしこれ30ポイントはもうさすがに覆んねえか。16部隊残ってんだけどやばすぎこれ。うわーランパート部隊の上やべえこいつら。ランパート部隊は崩せないっすね。でもラッコいじめこれ結構入んじゃねえんだよこれ。ラッコいじめ誰かが持ってたら。うわ RE4 も持ってるメタ武器。
Yep. We don't want to fast lockdown. We have Meldic cells, right? Can you put a Moby down? Can you put a Moby down so we can use cover? Maybe on this fence right here? Yeah.
さあ一旦壁。
Can't play that because there's gonna be someone's below me.
ラッコいじめ。
We might get pushed because we put a Moby down. Popping stone.
それはクリプトゼロだなね。ラッコいじめ入ってない。そこ来たら撃てって。Come this way。わかんねえけど。
They're fighting north side.
上ランパは熱いね。
Look north, free kills north.
さあ、振り打ち。キルポシー。ああ、取った。ダークで死んだ。ダークで死んだ。いや、さすがにしかし。プラス3じゃ無理だろうな。ファイアザファイア。うわー、さあ、さらにキル稼いでいく。しかし移動やばいな。ランパート部隊やばい。ランパート部隊ガチやばい。セルね、TSM やべえ。バッテリーあるか3本でも。うわー、そういるそう。オブリビオン結構熱くね、ポジ。どうなんだろう。戦って耐えれるのかな。ナッコーバリケード破壊入ってないな。レプス君どうした。入ってないぞ。ナッコーが入ってないぞ。パンチ外れて春下げるんだぞ。やば。いやでもこれTSM 移動成功してっから。
LG as well, Dan. LG once again into a position here to maybe capitalize on an end game. The story for them so far is close but not quite good enough in those final moments. Is this going to be the game where it changes?
Certainly, LG and Oblivion both in good spots at the moment. If they can just avoid the damage that's arriving from the teams that are up on the high ground, then they may be able to worm their way in. You can see the circle is pulling ever so slightly closer towards the likes of Oblivion and LG, but everything can change if you send it.
うわ、ぶち抜かれた。やば。やべえ、上。チュンチュンマしかねえ、上。上、チュンチュンマしかねえ。あー、オクシジン勝った。しかも LG これ下回ってるだけか。フェーズ攻めいった。フェーズ攻めいったわ。さあ、上のランパ降りてくれ、これ。上ランパ。しかも多分これ、グレ回収してるから。さあ、仕掛ける。いや、下行ったえ、下行ったらこれ TSM チャンスでこれ落としたいね。今のうちに。いや、フェーズ当たるか、先に。あ、刺したーハボックパワーハボックパワーハボックパワーやべえさあ、ランバード部隊撃破したい。さあ、一回浮いて空爆避ける。さあ、バタバタ耐えて、これ右が減ってるから右先頭か。ハボックパワーいやー、さすがに苦しい。まあ、しかし、まあまあまあ強いやー。まあまあまあまあまあ、LG がいいですね、正直。孤立したし、最後。うわーあーせいやでも、ダークだと TSM やマジやばかったな。世界最強2チーム。いやー、そういうことなんか。
These guys have demonstrated time and time again that they can get into final circles. We just hadn't seen them convert today. They convert it, they get it done, they play it successfully. Very impressed with how that's gone down. That's going to be a big points total for LG as well, which is going to put them right up there.
環境 LG もこれ入ったのか3位に。やばいね。逆転3位。Very happy.
Forcing their way into a position where I think they got inside of the placement points, and they also definitely had some KP to put on that. So you would imagine the Dark Zero, they've probably done enough to hold down first, but for everywhere else, it's very interesting. Phased as well. Decent points in that game, but LG, I think I mentioned how team changes, the only way to kind of validate them and feel confident in the decision you made is to win games of Apex. Well, LG have done that today. They win that final game and shown that they can get it done in the end game.
Yeah, we are going to see the gap closed as well with the
さあ、6キル強 TSM はゴッドだね。フェーズ0キルか。こもってただけか。
0 kills, but they were able to get into that final 3 with that rat in the end from some clever
ダークゼロ6キルか。7キルじゃなかったか。
without a ring console to work with. Dark Zero down in 10th, but they will still have the kind of trophy, as it were, today. They are still going to be our victors. They are still going to put down an incredible points total across the 6 matches. But the top 10, a very impressive game in some teams who really needed it.
Yeah, Elevate again inside that top 10, some KP, some placement points. That'll do them every single day of the week. Elsewhere, the winners of our previous game, Flat, not so much of a good game in our final one of the day. Just a 1 point for them. Skirt a little bit quiet, and POP, I have to say, a little bit quiet today on the overall standings. Complexity as well, they had a pretty good start to the day, but just got a little bit quiet towards the end of it. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch how the final standings look now that we see A and B conclude. And we see the points being put on the board down.
We're certainly starting to see some front runners, I would say, in this region. Rain Day, I mean, it's clear that Dark Zero, TSM, Elevate are all up there, but LG also putting themselves in contention to be mentioned here.
Absolutely. Killers ready to go, win any game at any moment. These are the teams in A and B that are going to give us an electric performance every time they clash. We'll be seeing, obviously, this group come together in a few weeks again, but that was amazing. Let's walk through those last moments on World's Edge, because there are a few teams we mentioned at the top, guys. You know, TSM,
Match 4.
obviously FaZe had a good game. LG with their first win, which was big for Sweet. But in this first World's Edge game that Onset you and I cast, there are a few teams that surprised me as well. E8, great positioning. Dark Zero, they really started to turn the corner and really put themselves in first place. But teams like Ape Gang, who 10 points in this last game in game 6, had really the god spot for most of the time here before this final zone.
Yeah, they did. They had a really good spot up on that crane. The difficulty, as I mentioned, is the zone pull away from them kind of just caused them a few problems because they had to drop from that height and they had multiple teams below them. Unless you're the Horizon, of course, who's going to be landing and with the passive be able to essentially have gunny up as soon as you land. Everyone else is just going to take a second to get in that fight. And we know how good these teams are and how well they team fight. That second is enough for damage to be done and for the fight to be resolved. But I think Dark Zero for me are probably the team, understandably, who were the most impressive today.
あ、ここ2ラウンド取ったんか。グレで。やば。
I love how Sox has just naturally fitted in on this team, right? Everyone has a clear role with just naturally how they play Apex, and I think I'd be pretty scared if I'm the rest of North America and the rest of the world.
あ、ここに落ちたんか、ファンダーズ。やば。ここに落ちたんか。ここまで動いてたんだね。あ、ここに落ちるわ。
We've seen it unfold right before our eyes. The questions becoming statements and then being answered so
超ギリで落ちたんだ。やば。かわいそう。今動いてたのに。ここで肩越えたいたんだね。まあ、今見返したらまだ耐えれたね、壁裏で。正直多分4部隊だと思ってたんと思うんだよね、これ。実際この青コンとかで耐えれて、一番最後に肩壁出してたら勝ってたね。今こう見ると。多分4部隊だと思ってて、多分耐えたんだと思うんだよね。
win this one.
A
lot of placement points that they have to work with, and they'll be delighted they were able to put something on the board in what was a rough week for them, but I'm sure they'll still be happy.
It seems like their fundamentals get the job done and find a good placement so that they can work on things next week. I am still waiting for who is that person on Optic who's going to step up. It's been so many times Hal on TSM.
優秀 IGL 未来見えたらかもね。ハボックパワー。バーハルスのハボックマジでやべえ、レベルちげえ。てかマジで今ハボックはマジ最強だからな。ワンマンができるし、DPS クソ高いし、ハボックゲーだよな。
to get a win, at least one win on their debut with this new roster, and Sweet, Slayer, and Funk did just that. Sarah Tricky
かぼちゃなしでこれだしな。
4 squads here, so surviving to get that top 3, which makes a difference for FaZe. Really solid performance from them. But Verholz, Hal, they go for the KP. They feel pretty safe. First is a little too far out of the way with how well Dark Zero played, and with E8 gone, they don't really have to worry about winning this one. But
おーダークゼロ90ポイント。1、TSM74 ポイント2。エレベート53ポイントはやっぱりなんかバグったね。20位されてたね。途中はね、LG が4位か。49。オプティック5位36。フィーズ35。6。そしてアペギャング。これランパード部隊だね。35ポイント。7位。で、スケアルティがこれはアルブラ34。オフィシリン34。結構詰まってんね。オブリビオン最初チャンピオン取ったけどその後全然伸ばせなかったね。33。やっぱアンチが良かっただけか。最初やっぱ。フラットとか落ちてるし。CO でももう外れないね。まあ、あとはまあこうチーボチった。まあ D のなんかショートファイトしてるしな。NA のヒューズですか？ちょっと仕上がってないですね。正直。甘いっすね。俺らはうまい気がする。うまさで言うと。でもダークゼット TSM もやっぱりやばいね。レベルがちげえがちで。レベチ。スナイプフェーズでやってるね、今。
Yeah, I mean, I look at those overall standards and there's
さあ、一応これ終わりかな。
There's the obvious TSM Dark Zero that's going to be talked about for quite some time. Both teams, I think, will be very happy with that day number 1.
よし、終わるか。
But there's the Elevate story. Also, if you look
ちょっと一旦終わりますね。まあ、また夜、作りも見るんで。いや、仲直りしたんじゃなくて別のメンバー行った。フェーズを。で、また夜作りまいじにしまーすんで、一旦終わります。はい、お疲れです。じゃあまた夕方ぐらいに。